new ideas and transform them into prototypes while they are in their formative years. IIC conducts various innovation and entrepreneurship related activities like periodic workshops, seminars, interactions with entrepreneurs, investors, professionals, and creates a mentor pool for all students who are interested in innovations and student innovators. Our current session is with Mr. Kshitij Anand sir. Next, I would like to invite Professor Jitendra Gangwar sir to introduce our expert, Mr. Kshitij Anand sir. Please, sir, we invite you to speak.
Thank you. Uh, Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Uh,
Yes, sir, you are
so,
audible.
so yeah. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce our today's speaker, Mr. Kshitij Anand, who is an vice president in PTM. I welcome you, sir. And it's an honor for our student to have the inside knowledge. What do you want to share? They can have the wide experience from your the experience you will be sharing with us. Thank you so much for taking up this opportunity, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I guess we are good to go. We have few students who are here, and some can keep joining in, right? And I'll quickly share my presentation, and then we'll have a. So it's like a working presentation. So what I mean by working presentation is there will be some slides which will be like kind of a blank, right? And the whole idea with the blank presentation, I always do, many times during workshop, is to just make sure that we have a participation from everybody, right? So I'm guessing all of you are excited about this session as much as I am. Like I really enjoy spending time with students. I have been doing a lot of interesting work. Of course, you'll get to know a little bit more about me in the times today. But at the same time, like happy to connect offline as well. Like I share my email details and my contact details, LinkedIn, Twitter. So wherever you feel that you want to reach out to me, have a discussion on anything, get some, directions, get some feedback, please feel free to do so. All right. Is my voice clear enough for everyone? A quick yes or a no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
you are audible, sir.
yes,
Okay,
sir.
perfect. Okay, so I use Microsoft Teams very less. Mostly we use either Zoom or Google Meet. So I'm still figuring out all the functionalities of Microsoft Meets, right? Teams. All right. So without further ado, right? We have about approximately 2.5 to 3 hours, and we'll see how far we can, go, right? I'm not sure whether we'll be able to take full of that time. If yes, I think there is enough things that we might want to, of course, engage in, discuss in. But the goal is obviously to give you a good understanding of what product fit means for the market, right? And the challenge is that many times we miss out on one of these things. We either don't understand product well, we don't understand fitment well, or we don't understand the market well, right? And any of these could actually cause a problem, right? Thankfully, with the initiatives like what we have today, of which you all are part of, which is also hosting this seminar, and I would really like to thank all the faculty members and the faculty in charge, as well as the students who kind of coordinate these kind of sessions, because back when I was in college, none of these existed, right? Like I was in college in IIT Guwahati in 2001, 2002, and of course then none of these things existed, right? There was no innovation councils, there was no so much of a push towards innovation or towards starting up, right? So I'm really excited to see that there are so many students who are excited about starting up, about creating new products. I think India, if you ask me overall, is such an exciting place to be when it comes to building new products and technological products, right? And being in an ecosystem like MNIT, where technology is the kind of the center of a lot of the innovation that is going to happen, right? And also, if you look at the government's push towards creation of more technology solutions, the digital transformation that can do a lot of wonders for the country, right? If you look at, for example, I work in banking. The fact that banking earlier used to be very offline, You had to go to the banks, get things done. Today, like Paytm serves almost 99% of all of India's districts, right? And that has only been made possible because we have leveraged digital technologies to an extent, which has allowed that end user, has allowed the end consumer to access banking services, right? And that's the power of technology. Today, if you look at another example that we all often talk about, is education, right? When specifically during the COVID times, where because of the access to edtech products, edtech tools, a lot of people were able to at least continue education. Of course, there is still a substantial number of people in India who don't have access to it, but that number is growing, right? So when you look at, for example, our mobile subscriber base, we are more than about a billion people who have access to mobile phones. We have almost like more than 500 million people in India who actually have access to good internet, right? And 500 million may seem small sometimes, but when you look at it, it's more than the population of the United States of America. And that's the moment you put it in that reference, it's a mind-blowing fact, right? That suddenly you have less than half of India is bigger the market size than the whole of US, right? And it's just amazing. So if you put, let's say, US, UK, France together, that still combines together is lesser than the number of people in India who use the internet. So technology, of course, yes, it has been, of course, we had the, STD phone revolution, then we had the mobile, revolution with the whole, Reliance coming in saying, Kar do duniya muthi mein. And then we had the internet revolution, which was brought about with Jio and the likes, who kind of spearheaded this whole 4G revolution in India and said that, we are going to make internet access, mobile data availability to the common man at a very low cost, right? And these are some factors, right, on which you start building innovative solutions. So as a person who is interested in, let's say, building innovative solutions, as a person who's interested in thinking about how to innovate for India and the context, here are some trends you should always keep in mind. First, the fact that a substantial population of India went from no technology to a very powerful technology in the form of phone, right? They never went. So in typical in the US, what happened was people went from no technology to a desktop, from a desktop to a mobile phone, and then mobile phone to, let's say, smarter devices, right? In India, people went from no technology straight away to smartphones. So now you can imagine the amount of disruption that this has caused in that whole market, right? Now suddenly you have people who have so much computing power in their pockets by virtue of this mobile phone that is just mind-boggling when you think about it, right? And that, as a person who is really, so I come from a design background, I did like user experience design, I had design teams in Paytm and also other companies. I find it to be such a powerful thing, right? That we suddenly have access to technology. Our people have access to technology, right? Of course, there will always be the critic of it who will say that technology is bad and we should not think everything from technology. But then it's not just only technology, right? You also add, let's say, certain layers of service design to it. You add certain layers of the human element to it. But technology is here to stay, right? So technology proliferation is going to happen even more rapidly. There was an interesting data point at some point of time which said that we have more mobile phone connections in India than we have the number of toilets, right? Of course, some people would laugh at it, but that was a reality. Unless we had, until later on when we had, of course, the Prime Minister talk about India becoming open defecation free, and the whole notions about projects after projects under Swachh Bharat mission, which talked about making India an ODF nation, right, open defecation free nation. There was a huge emphasis on all the other things, which basically also started to require technology in some manner. So, for example, things like tracking these evolution of these projects, understanding what areas have been covered, understanding what areas have actually, still facing problems. Technology can be leveraged in different ways. So, as a person, if I look at my own journey, because I talk to a lot of students, one of the things that I try to inspire a lot more is that if you just step out of your room, right, and go to the market, and irrespective of where you are right now, many of you may be working from home, studying from home. I'm also right now in my home in a small town in Bihar right now. But whenever I go to the markets, it just amazes me the amount of things people are doing with technology. the amount of possibilities that are there to do with technology, right? There's so many things that you can do. So the number of innovative products that are coming out in the market today, all of them are doing some very simple things, right? Many of you might have heard of this company called Khata Book, right? Which basically all it does, it maintains your online digital khata of, people who take purchases, people who take what do you call take udhar, and basically it keeps a record, digital record, and sends you a reminder for the payment at a certain point of time. It's a very simple solution. So people are trying to do a lot of things, interesting things with technology, right? So and that is here to stay. As I said, more people will start using technology in more different forms. A classic example is a lot of our, if you look at our grandparents' generation, right? Even they are coming to use technology in certain manner. Of course, they still face challenges with certain things, but there is, there is this inclination that, if we can do some things, it is going to be, helpful for us to do. So if you go out in the market and just start to observe around you, you will see that, there is just so many challenges. And as I always say, that the challenges are opportunities in disguise, right? So the moment you spot a challenge, the moment you spot a challenging, you should know that as an innovator, as a person who's interested to doing some interesting products or startups, that is my opportunity, right? That is the opportunity that you want to really target. And if you look at the whole sustainable development goals that even the United Nations talks about, every area, whether it comes to education, whether it comes to healthcare, whether it comes to environment, whether it comes to agriculture, whether it comes to equality, whether it comes to understanding the oceans, whether it comes to equality, gender issues, whether it comes to preparing for a future, societies, communities, everything has been disrupted or is being disrupted as we speak with technology, right? So the first trend is, of course, technology is here to stay. That is not going anywhere. In fact, it will only evolve further, right? And in fact, one of the interesting books that I'm reading right now is this book called Prediction Machines, right? If you can see this book, and it's a very interesting book, and it says that simple economics of artificial intelligence, because it says that one of the biggest premises of this book is that um, what artificial intelligence or AI does is it's basically getting good at prediction, right? Back in the days when, let's say, when there was no technology in place, we would predict stuff based on the information we had, right? And our minds would be able to process only a certain amount of information. So our prediction was to a certain extent. But now that task of actually prediction, or the task of combining the data and churning the data towards come up with fruitful predictions, is being done by machines, right? So eventually, a lot of the role that predicting like good outcomes, predicting good solutions, predicting what a situation would be, is being done by machine, right? And that's where data science, if you look at, is so exciting, because the fact that you are collecting so much data at any point of time is then helpful for us to design new solutions, right? So any domain you pick up, technology can disrupt that domain. It has been happening in mobility solutions. It is happening in healthcare. It is happening in education. It's happening in financial inclusion space. It is happening in mobilities. It is happening in our, homes, in our lives, in our social life. It's just everywhere, right? So that's the first trend. Second trend, of course, is around internet, right? I think if you ask me, there is no better leveler today for innovation than internet. Like just today morning, I was seeing this video of a 14-year-old girl in Goa in a flea market selling, like handmade soaps, like actual like a proper business. And someone was interviewing her, and she said, "I learned all of this on YouTube, right? I learned how to make soap. I learned how to plan my business strategy. I learned how to price it out. I learned how to identify my market, and then eventually I decided to come and sell it here." All of this, just 14-year-old girl doing all of this just by learning from YouTube. And it's just mind blowing to think about the amount of information that is there at our disposal today, right? All of us have so much information at our disposal. I personally think only a fool would, like, somebody would be a fool to not leverage all this information that is out there and go and build something, right? Then I have a friend of mine who has this platform called Pepper Content, and basically what they do, if you look at content creation, right, that again is a huge market, right? Everybody is creating content, everybody is starting up with the Atal Innovation Mission that the government has, innovation council that has been set up in colleges. There is a lot of push towards innovation, there is a lot of push towards creating innovative solutions, and internet becomes a leveling ground, because then suddenly now everybody has access to the same video, right? Everybody has access to the same soap making video, whether you are sitting in a village in Nagaland, or you're in Andaman, or you are in London, right? Everybody has access to the same thing. It's upon you as to how much you want to leverage it, right? So internet access to internet, again, a critical factor. Now we are talking about 5G coming into the world, into India, in a few months time, or maybe in the next year or so. But even when you're looking at 4G, right, I think the biggest contribution that Jio has had to the development of India is the launch of Jio network, right? And in fact, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Jio story, but Jio basically said that we are not going to build our network on 2G and 3G, but we are going to straight away build for 4G and above. And that was an amazing decision, because one, of course, it made business sense for them, but at the same time, they were setting up the whole country to become familiar with 4G and the power of 4G. And what that resulted in today, if you're familiar with, all of you probably must be doing video recordings. The fact that we are having these conversations so seamlessly over video content is the is a consequence of good 4G networks, right? A lot of times, like Airtel still has, Airtel and other players, Vodafone, they still have a lot of their what do you call towers, and the infrastructure which is built for 3G and 2G. So in a way, it's almost like a legacy or a baggage for them to kind of manage. But Reliance is entirely built on 4G, right? The Geo, and that is just amazing, because and the third thing that they said, the third trend that we have to also keep in mind is access to mobile data is very cheap. So one, you have technology, second you have internet, third you have access to data which is really really cheap. Like I tell to my friends in the US that this is how low 1 GB data cost in India, and they are just shocked by it. They are just shocked by the fact that how can you actually get 2 GB of data every day for like so small an amount, right? Like if you look at like Airtel plan that I use is about 695 rupees or something, 700 rupees for 1 month, right? And that 1 month cost is about what, like almost like 20 rupees per day, right? Or for 20 rupees per day, I'm getting 2 GB data every single day. And that just blows your mind, because nowhere in the world mobile data is so cheap, right? So again, technology, internet, and the fact that data is cheap, right? We don't know how long that is going to be, but this is a nice time for us to, So earlier, I remember back in the days, maybe 3-4 years ago, 2-3 years ago, I would actually stop my mobile data the moment I was not using it. But today, even if I leave my phone mobile data on for the whole day, many times I don't consume the full data. Of course, I'm not probably a power user like you all are, but still, like the fact that there is so much mobile data available, and you're able to build on top of that, right? So, with that background, right, I feel that this is the best time for anybody who's thinking about building products for India. And when we talk about market, we'll talk specifically about the Indian market. And I feel that when we're talking about products, we will probably talk a little bit more about technology products, because that's what the background I come from. And being in a technical institute like MNIT, I think all of you would be probably creating products in the technology domain as well, right? So, couple of house rules. I want to just call it out. We will basically. There'll be a few slides where there will be blank slides, right? And I would expect you to kind of participate. You can, kind of put in your views, because it's a workshop. Ideally, I do a lot of these workshops in a physical environment. So hopefully one day I get to visit MNIT and I can do a physical workshop with all of you in your college as well. But till that doesn't happen, we will leverage what we have right now, right? And we will try to leverage the best of this Microsoft Teams environment. I think there is I don't know if the chat window is enabled or not, but even if it's not, you can just call out, you can just, speak up something if you have to say something. And there would be times when I would actually ask you to speak up. I will tell you that, if you don't speak up, we're not moving ahead, right? So the onus is up to you that whether you want to participate and move ahead, or you can just, keep staring at our faces. Of course, I'm not able to see your faces, but you can see mine. And mine is not that a pretty face, right? So it's almost like, you would get bored seeing it very quickly, right? So I would say participate, right? There will be time for question and answers towards the end. I want to keep like the last half an hour or so, because I understand, many times when I would do these workshops, people have a lot more questions than what I actually have to offer, right? So we will use the last half an hour to maybe kind of engage, like deeply engage in some question answers. So even if you, during the course of this, what do you call, session, or maybe even after that session. Like even like you might have already had come up with some questions beforehand. Just make sure that you kind of either type it out or you can call it out so that we can spend some time on that, right? I just all of you must be familiar with this product. Are you familiar with this product? Yes, no? How many of you have seen this? Is there a way to collect audience feedback here? Vivek?
Yes, raising the hands.
Oh, raising them, but I cannot see everybody's thing. Okay, ha. Okay, I see a lot of people have seen it. Okay, interesting, interesting. Okay, so we will talk about this in some time as well. All right. Okay. So just a quick background of myself. I am a designer. Primarily, I've been in the design industry for almost like uh, 16 years now. But of course, I studied design. So if you add that, it's almost like 20 years into design now. I graduated from IIT Guwahati in 2005. Back in time when no one knew about design and no one knew about IIT Guwahati. Very few people knew about IIT Guwahati, but not so much people knew about design. Then I went to the US to do my master's in interaction design from Indiana University, Bloomington. While I was there, I worked in Motorola. Before I went to the US, I was with Infosys for a while. I headed design at Coolisa. Then I ran my own consulting business for almost like 5-6 years. Prior to Paytm, I was with 1MG, where I was heading the UX team there. And then currently I'm with Paytm, where I work in the Paytm for Business design team, and I head that team. And also I look at design operations, right? I also run a non-profit organization called Happy Horizons Trust. And recently I became an investor with Curricula Ventures. It's a kind of small investment firm that I started with a few friends of mine. But I continuously love to teach. I love to do workshops. I love to do sessions, engage with students. So every semester I end up doing few sessions, either through long workshops or through series of workshops at different colleges. IIT Delhi, IIT Guwahati, IIT Bombay. Of course, I'm not mentioned there. But then apart from those, I do regularly at DY Patil in Pune, Deshan Nadar, which is there. So those are my contact details in case anyone is wanting to connect. If you're connecting on LinkedIn, drop me a note before you do that so that I have a reference point. I try to be active on Twitter, and that's my email address as well. All right. So I'm guessing, right? And I'm guessing, right? Can I have a quick show of hands? How many of you actually want to start up or have already started up? Quick show of hands. You can raise your hand. I see around 70 people in the audience. So I do see that there are a lot of people who want to start up or have already started up. All right, that's great. That's very heartening to see. Yeah, that many people are interested in really. Oh, I spot a Kshitij also in the audience. Huh. Okay, great. How many people have actually already started up, already doing something? Like anybody, if the ones who have not started or thinking about, you can put your hands down. But the ones who have already started out, you can probably raise your hand. Okay, I see around 5, 7, 5, 6, 5, 3, 2. Okay, people started to put their hands down, hands down, hands down, hands down. All right, so there is like no one actually saying that they've already started up, right? The interesting thing, Rajat says yes, he's already started up. Wonderful. Amit is also there. Okay, so the interesting thing is, right, the barrier to startup today is so low that even if you're remotely interested in starting up, you should do it like ASAP. Like do it like today or like tomorrow. Just start. And when I say start, you don't have to have the most perfect idea. You don't have to have the most well thought about idea. But if you have a passion to start something, just start it, right? And some of you may be familiar with this company Pepper. It's been in the limelight of late a lot. It's a content creator content platform for getting you access to content creators, and that has been started when it was in final year college, right? Many companies actually started when they were in college itself, right? I mean, Facebook is another classic example. So what Facebook was happening, what happened was happening in the US, let's say around the time when Facebook was starting, 2005, 2006. That is same thing that's happening in the Indian colleges today, right? So you have a huge push towards college students starting up, huge push towards colleges encouraging their students to start new companies. There's innovation grants. Every almost every major what do you call almost every major college in the country, at least IITs and NITs, has a entrepreneurship development cell. They have a incubation center. They have government grants available. So it's best to use that time to really start. If you're really interested in starting up, use the access to your resources which you already have, and really go ahead with that, right? So if you are thinking of starting up, the entry barrier is very low, right? Sitting at your home in wherever you are with internet, you suddenly have access to the user across India, right? The fact that you can build, and even if you're non-programmer, even if you have no access to coding, let's say, even if you don't have interest in coding, there are so many no-code tools available out there that you can actually, build stuff without writing a single line of code, right? So it's very easy. All drag and drop, pull stuff, push things together, connect it with one system, connect it with the other, and it's very easy to mash it up and go live, right? So that initial barrier which used to exist, right? कि यार मेरे को I don't have an understanding of what my users will be. I can just do a video call. I can do some conferencing. I can actually get data which is available. I can watch videos to actually get information about that particular user group, and make a sense of understanding of that. I can actually then, the idea, I can sit with a few friends. There's so many of these canvases available. I'll share a few of them in a while as well, just to understand how do you think about business model, how do you think about business modeling, which helps you to really think about like the business aspect of your idea as well. um, Launching something, there's so many sites which allow you to launch sites for free, right? All you need is to buy a domain name. You can actually host one website for free, right? So all these things, without spending too much money, without writing a single line of code, without going and traveling somewhere else, you can do a lot of things, right? I think the roadblock that used to exist in the mind earlier, that has all been broken down, right? Like that's the reason why you probably have a 12-year-old, 14-year-old also doing amazing stuff, sitting at their homes, right? So if you're remotely interested in starting up, I would suggest that you should think about it seriously. I personally think in my journey, if I reflect back, I started up pretty late, right? I set up a non-profit organization. I set up a consulting practice. I started very late, like almost 7 years after I graduated, right? In hindsight, I wish I had started before, right? I wish I had started that journey before. But then some people say, the experience is also valuable. So you got that experience and that actually helped you in your later on. So either way, it's fine. But I think, it's good to start early. One major reason being that when you start early, you don't have so much of a responsibility. You don't have so much of a, baggages, responsibilities to cater to, right? Uh, Today, if I think of starting up on my own, I have to think about, I have two daughters, I have a family, I have aging parents, I have a house to take care of, there might be some loans out there. There's so many things that come along with it, right? And as you make the progress in life, these baggages or these responsibilities keep getting added on. And as these responsibilities get added on, our risk-taking ability also goes down. So you are more likely to take a risk when you're younger and in college or just fresh out of college. So if you're thinking of starting up, that's the best time to do it, right? The second thing which is important also is like these days, there are so many platforms where you can get access to mentors, right? And that is another huge advantage that in India, at least, you have today. In fact, mentoring has been popular around the world, but in India also, let's say, some of you might have seen videos of Ankur Warikoo, or you might have seen videos of, let's say, there's, Siddharth Maheshwari, there's people who actually gone and built stuff are giving their, insights to people, right? Some might have mentoring sessions for free, some have, some paid mentoring sessions, but those really help you to really, get mentoring and start out there as well. So it's important that if you have an idea, go for it. You'll get the access to the funds, you'll get access to people, you'll get access to mentors. There's no reason why you should not do. And the fact, one thing which I always tell to myself or whenever I speak to people, specifically from the IITs and the NITs, is that we are the people like who actually should have the most risk-taking appetite, because you know that if you're coming from a good university, you could probably through your leverage your alumni network to also get a job if things don't work out, right? So that safety net is there. So it's best to think about starting up, and if I can be of any help any point of time, feel free to just reach out for that as well. All right. So many times we all start up, right? But then what happens sometimes is, you must have heard of this example, heard of this, that data which says that almost 90% of startups in the world fail, right? All of you must have heard that data point, right? Here, the success rate of startups is very low. And because the success rate is very low, people find it very risky to start. People are like, यार क्या फायदा हुआ start करके, because it is going to just end in failure, right? Interestingly, the most important reason why startups fail is the lack of a product market fit, right? Or the fact that there's no market need for it. Many times what happens is we end up creating products which doesn't have a need, and it's bound to fail because no matter how hard we try, it's not going to work, right? And then we'll come later on as to how we kind of address that. But then there are many other reasons also why startups fail, right? And if you can look at this basic list here as well. For example, you run out of cash, right? Like that's another a major reason that used to be the cases earlier. That is reducing a lot, because today, if you ask me, in the market, there is a lot of money available, right? When I say money in terms of investment capital, in terms of angel investing, in terms of seed capital, which is available, which a lot of people, at least the people who have been entrepreneurs in their lives, who have had some successful exits, a lot of venture firms starting out, they have the appetite to go and invest in some new startup, which is upcoming startups, right? So running out of cash should not be a problem these days, as long as your product market fit is maintained. If you, let's say, don't have a product market fit, as well as you run out of cash, then of course it's a problem, because you don't even have the product market fit. But if you have the market fit, I can guarantee you that you'll never run out of cash, because there will always be an investor who will be willing to invest in you. And in fact, I was reading this article by Sajid Pai. Sajid is a director at Bloom Ventures, and they do some very interesting, what do you call, they do some very interesting investments, and they have had some very interesting investments in the past as well. And one of the things he writes is that it is not always that the founders run after VCs, right? Many times, if you're a great founder, the VCs are also running after you. So it is equally important for a VC or an invest or a funding person to believe in that team, who's the person who's leading it, right? So today, if you ask, there is a lot of people available from whom you can raise funds, right, from an individual capacity to an institutional funding capacity, right? And this is of course not a masterclass on funding, so I won't go into details of that. But in generally, right, you could raise money from, let's say, individual. So somebody could ask me that, sir, are you interested in funding my startup? If I find a liking, I probably invest as an individual capacity, right? Or you might say, I want to do an institutional investment, which is via, let's say, one of my, the startup venture, like the Curriculum Ventures, or let's say through, there's Bloom Ventures, there's so many of these other, investment firms. That's an institutional funding, right? So many times what happens is, and the third point, which is also very essential, is having the right team, right? My biggest reason why to shut down my own startups, or why I feel that I cannot grow, is because I often am not able to. I'm not often, but in the one that I have done stopped doing, I was not able to build a right team around that, right? And I feel that time is also the what do you call, having that particular the right team who can help you to make sure that you are relevant in the market, to make sure that your product is acceptable in the market, to make sure that your product is still kind of a force to reckon with in the market, is important, right? Which brings me to the next point, which is get out competed. For example, today you launch, let's say, an email service, and tomorrow Google says that, hey, you know what, you bought something out, I'm just going to buy you out, or I'm going to beat you out of your competition, right? So many startups, specifically if they don't get, let's say, good market traction, they get out competed, and they're just not able to compete with, let's say, in the biggies out there, right? And of course, there are many other reasons beyond that, right? But if you are, but you look at the top 5 reasons, right? No market need is the probably the most important one. And even though we have technology, even though we have internet, even though we have access to mobile phones, we have to be sure about what kind of a product would actually succeed, and that comes only when you understand about product and market fitment, right? And it's sometimes it takes a lot of back and forth. It's not that it's going to happen immediately. It will take time. Very few, in fact, very 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 few startups actually get product market fit right in the first instance, right? Probably that number is probably less than 20% of startups who actually get product market fit right in the first instance, right? And that's a part of the startup journey as well, right? You iterate, you launch something, you get some feedback, you launch something, you go back to the market, you go back to your drawing board, take some feedback, launch something again, go back again. So there's a lot of this back and forth that keep happening, right? And the reason why you need good investors to back you up is because so that you don't run out of cash while you're in this back and forth journey, right? So important to keep in mind that yes, your idea is good, but then it has market, and it is, for example, what do you call relevant to the market, and it is, you have the wherewithal to kind of take it forward. There will always be an investor who will be there to back you up, right? And that's something which has been seen, and the fact that today there are more investors out there who are willing to back more startups as well, right? So product market fit is probably the most important thing, right? And we'll take one by one. We'll talk a little bit about the product. We'll talk a little bit about the market, and we'll talk a little about what does it mean to really fit it. And then hopefully we will extend that beyond to some of the discussion points about around the whole context of the workshop as well, right? Okay, so let's start with our first, breakout thing, right? So, what is a product? Like, if I were to ask you, what is a product, right? So, as you can see, my slide is very empty slide here, right? Of course, I have a certain way of talking about it, and I'll tell about it more. But I want to hear your thoughts, right? What comes to your mind when you talk about when you say a product, right? What comes to your mind? And you can just answer. You can just unmute yourself and just answer.
A product is a thing or service that people need and pay money for it.
Okay, so it's a product is a, you said, is a service or a thing, you said,
Yes, sir.
or a thing.
Product which solve my problem.
A product is something that people will pay for it.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what. Okay, and a product will
Will be something which would solve my problem, any problem, specific problem.
thing that solves problem. Okay, what else? What else comes to your mind when you talk about the word a product? Yes, Gautam, go ahead, go ahead. Gautam, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead. Other
There's
people
a thing which is made to fulfill the needs.
to fulfill the needs. Okay, probably something to needs. Okay, what else? I see 74 participants, so I'm expecting at least 70 answers, right? Other people, come on. Otherwise, I'm just going to start calling out names, and I'm very bad at that. Like, people really hate me for it. I just start calling out names from the list of participants. Yes, come on, people. All right, I'm going to
Sir,
start.
like that make is
Yes, go ahead.
sir. The product is also that can be make our life easy or better than past.
Okay, something that our lives is. Okay, that's a nice definition. Something that makes the life easier than the past. Okay, can you give me an example of that? Any example of a product which you think has made your life easier than the past?
Like Amazon,
Mobile phone.
Amazon.
that
Okay.
give us opportunity to shop online and without going
Aeroplane.
market.
Okay.
Google Chrome.
Google.
Mobile phones.
Sorry, was that? Harshita, were you saying something?
Yes, sir. Mobile phone.
Mobile phone. Yes.
ATM.
Lot of-
Sir,
ATM.
internet.
Internet.
Internet. Okay. So internet, mobile tools. Yeah. So, of course.
Aeroplane.
Pardon?
Aeroplane.
Aeroplane. Yeah. Very interestingly, whenever a
Light
product
bulb. Light bulb.
light bulb. So whenever these products come out, right, people always start, questioning it, right? If you ask, if you read the stories, historical stories, and that's something which I love to read. A lot of the historical stories say that whenever this new invention comes out, people like kind of laugh at it, right? So when iPhone came out, Nokia laughed at it, right? Yeah, this is not going to be successful, right? Or Microsoft laughed when, let's say, Sony was, kind of amused when iPod was launched, right? Even when Wright brothers launched what do you call thing, people were kind of, very skeptical that this is not going to succeed, right? So whenever there is a what do you call a new innovation in place, right? Of course, people will laugh at it because people have never experienced it before, right? So when people have never experienced something before, they are going to base their judgment on just some predictions, right? And many times those predictions go wrong, right? In fact, if you look at almost every innovative product which is out there, which has disrupted the market, it has been, it has actually proved that prediction to be wrong, right? People predicted that the flights won't be successful. People predicted that cars may not be successful. People predicted that printing press will not be successful. People predicted that internet will not be successful. But then it has kind of changed things, right? And it changes because people start using it. People start developing a certain vision for it. Okay, what else? What else comes to your mind when you think about the word product?
Something that fulfills your need and which must be affordable to the majority of people.
Okay, something that is affordable. Does anybody disagree to that? Something that is affordable to majority, that is only a product, otherwise it's not a product. We are okay to disagree, okay? So in this workshop, it's okay to have a difference of opinion. But I love when
They
people
are
have
also very expensive products, yeah, which are really successful, like
right.
yes, sir,
Like
Car
iPhone.
and all that
iPhone,
brands.
sir.
Yes, sir. There can
iPhone
be
is
a
not affordable.
product which will be for small market,
Okay.
so that their price can be higher for
Right.
large businesses.
Right. Right. So for example, if I take the example of a Lamborghini car, right? Is it still a product?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is it, is it a service or thing that people will pay for? A Lamborghini car, is it a service or a thing that people will pay for it?
Of course, sir, it provides a lot
Yes,
of.
sir. Absolutely.
Does it solve a specific
You
problem?
can pay for it.
Does
Only
okay this
those who can afford this, they can pay for
this
that. Not
yeah, yeah.
everyone.
This is a very interesting question. Does a Lamborghini car solve a specific problem?
No, sir.
How many people
No,
think
sir.
that?
Sir, but it enhances
Sir,
the
it's
way
a
of.
problem of status. It
Okay,
gives a status.
so I'm going to do a quick poll. Can we do polls on Microsoft Teams? I don't know.
No, sir, I don't think so. Yeah.
And chat window is also
Yeah.
disabled. Okay, no issues. Um, so typically, okay, who can answer? What is what is specific problem that is being addressed, or something, the specific need that is being addressed in the case of a Lamborghini car?
Sir, comfort, speed,
What's that?
Status
comfort,
symbol,
luxury.
brand.
Status.
Provides status.
Sir, it's a passion, one's passion.
Mm-hmm.
Sir,
Passion,
luxury.
luxury. Okay, but what is the specific problem that we are trying to address there? Any guesses on what is the specific problem we are trying to address there with the Lamborghini car?
Status building.
Status building, right? Right. So status building might be one, and for a lot of people, if you look at that bracket of people, right? For
Sir,
them,
comfort.
I don't know how comfortable Lamborghini cars are, but yeah, okay, I'll go for it because I've never sat in a Lamborghini, so I don't know how it is. But I'm assuming that it's comfortable enough. But more than comfort, I think the specific problem that a Lamborghini car is solving is that of a status symbol, right? Because when you are in that circle, you probably have this need to maintain that status, right? And that's the problem for which, let's say, a Lamborghini card is trying to address, saying that, hey, let's say, like, so for example, if you are, and not just Lamborghini, you can take the way people buy cars, right? The way people, let's say, what do you call, make decisions on the kind of things they want to own, the kind of things they want to buy, is often driven a lot upon their social economic status, and their social economic status will define a lot about their own problems, right? And in fact, I'll come to this later as well. What is somebody's needs might not be somebody else's needs. Do you all agree? What
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
my need may
Yes,
not be
sir.
need, right? So this is an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, see, so because needs keep varying from people to people, and specifically with your social economic categories, you can really define what the need is for that category. So, for example, if I'm talking to a farmer in, let's say, in hinterlands of Odisha, their needs are very different than a farmer in Haryana, right? Because the per capita income of that same farmer is different in two states, right? The environment in which they are living is different. The people that they are living in is different. The society is, the social status is different. The cultural norms are different. So the needs, there might be certain needs which are common, but there might be certain needs which are completely different from these two, the same farmer population, same age group, but because they live in different cultural context, their needs could be different, right? What else comes to your mind? Anything else? Someone said, so I know you, a lot of you give examples of, products that has made our lives easier than the past. So, for example, you talked about flights, you talked about ATMs, you talked about cards. Some may say, like internet, mobile phone, etc., etc. Right? So, when you say a product that is affordable to majority, I kind of disagree to that, because it's not just about affordable to majority, because it has to be affordable to that appropriate age group or appropriate social economic status, right? So instead of majority, I might just want to call it uh, uh, specific SEC, right? So SEC, you understand SEC, right? Social economic cultural status. Okay. Okay. What else comes to your mind when you talk about the word product?
It should be profitable for manufacturer.
Profitable for manufacturers. Okay. Profitable for manufacturer. Okay. Anybody else? What do you mean by that? Profitable for manufacturer?
Sir,
Let's say. So
Sir,
let's say.
It
What's
must
your
generate revenue.
What's your name?
it
Who
will
said?
generate.
Uh,
Yes, sir.
who said Rajat? Right? You mentioned that.
That's Priyanshu, sir.
Yes, sir.
Priyanshu, yeah. So Priyanshu, so if I ask you this question, that if something is not profitable for the manufacturer in the first year, should you then
No,
stop
sir.
doing it?
No, sir. At the long time. I'm talking about long time.
Okay. So this is a good
Not
point. I wanted to make sure that you understood that in the long run, right? So this is an
long time.
important part, right? Because every venture that you start will be at loss in the first few years, right? Whether you're doing a manufacturing, whether you're a services company, whether you're doing a, let's say, product which you built on technology, everything will be profitable only in the long run. And that is something which you should always keep in mind, right? Never assume that only in the short run, if it's not profitable, we are going to shut it down. Because that's a lot of startups, they do that. Anything else that comes to your mind? What is the product?
Sir, it
it
enhances
should
the way of living and saves time.
Okay, so something that makes life easier than the past. It also saves time. I will put that same thing there. What else? Someone
sir,
was saying.
sir,
Product is
it
actually
should it should be
outcome of need.
So need we already know. Something that fulfills the need is an outcome of the needs. Needs we mentioned. Yes, Sai Ratna.
Sir, I have told, sir, I have told.
Oh, you have told it. Okay, put your hand down then. Okay, Priyanshu, you have anything again?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, it should be needable for market. Matlab,
Ah,
there should be market for it.
okay. So there should be.
sir.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. What else?
Sir, it should be sustainable, eco-friendly with the
So there's a lot of debate around, let's say, a lot of these, products which are there in the market, which are actually non-sustainable, non-eco-friendly. For example, some of you might have heard the debate around, bitcoins and cryptocurrency, because they are actually, there's no physical entity involved. It's all just server cost and data cost, and it's basically kind of not very environment friendly, right? But there are products in the market, right, which are basically non-sustainable initially, and over the years they try to make it, eco-friendly as well. Okay, great. So this is good, right? Like a lot of you have a good understanding of what product are. The few things that is very critical to remember here. Service, it could be a service or a thing. Like a thing, when I say thing, it could be a physical entity, right? And the important part is that people will pay for it, right? This is important to remember, because if people don't pay for it, then you will never become profitable, right? Or you will always be running your errands, and it will be difficult for you to basically um, run the business, right? So it become a lost cause. Okay, so something that solves the problem. Why I wanted to highlight this point here is because a lot of people, right, they build products without doing research, and the research, basically agenda of the research is actually to go and find a specific problem to address, right? Now the challenge becomes when you are trying to create something for, let's say, a community which you don't know and you have never been there, right? You can do some guesses. Chances are that product might fail because you have actually not understood that thing, understood that community well. A lot of times products fail because people have not been able to specify that problem, and people are not able to specify a problem because they don't spend enough time in researching about that problem, right? So if I'll give you an example from my own life. I run a non-profit for the past 7-8 years now, and we've kind of spent considerable amount of time trying to understand the market, trying to understand things, and now we're trying to build an edtech platform which we feel is relating to the needs that we've identified through our years of work in that education domain, right? And we know specifically what problem it tries to solve because we have seen that problem existing from a long period of time, right? We've seen the needs that, let's say, teachers have, we see the needs that parents have, we see the needs that students have, right? And we try to fulfill those needs, and that is where we are trying to build the product. When you don't spend enough time in understanding the problem, you bring in your own biases towards problem solving. And a classic example of that bias in problem solving is कि यार मेरे को अच्छा लग रहा है, I feel this is a problem, hence everybody should be facing this problem or might be facing this problem. Has it happened ever with you that you think that this is a problem and you realize, you start to generalize here, because I am facing this problem, maybe everybody else is facing the problem. And once you go and start doing research, you realize, you know what? It is not that everybody, it's only me who's facing the problem, everybody else is fine with it. Right? So this often happens as well, right? Something that fulfills a need, we'll talk about that more details in a bit. Something that makes our lives easier than the past, something that saves time. Time, if you, like a lot of people say today, product design, whether it's a physical product or it's a tangible product or a digital product, the biggest currency, the most important currency that people have today is actually time. Right? People don't want to save money. They are okay to pay a 10 rupees extra or 100 rupees extra if it can save your time. Right? Our temples leverage this the best in India. In every temple you go in India, and I have been to travel like temples across the country, right, from Guwahati to Dwarka, from up in the north like Rameshwaram in the south. I've been to temples all around to kind of with my parents and grandparents and showing them around. One thing I realized, that nothing exemplifies better than saving time than temples in India, because every temple has a VIP entry out there. You pay 500 rupees extra, you pay a few rupees extra, and you get a entry. And what was funny was, once we were in, I think it was in Kamakhya temple in Guwahati or somewhere, where the VIP entry line was actually bigger than the normal line. And it was funny because everybody thought they want to save time, but eventually none of us end up saving time. Right? All of us actually spend more amount of time. But today people are willing to spend that extra money by virtue of getting access to products and services, which saves them time, right? And that is something which we all should remember, that when you are building a product, there will always be some people who would want it for free, which is the freemium model. There will be somebody who will be willing to pay a premium for it, right? Which is the premium service fees. And the expectation is that in that premium, I actually get access to, let's say, for example, a lot of companies have this. You have a membership fees for a year, and you can get access to quality customer care in that 1 year, because everybody knows that getting access to customer care, making a phone call, IVR, wait kar rahe, wait kar rahe, it takes so much time. So many people prefer to buy that membership in the hope that by accessing that specific membership program, I get access to better customer service, right? So people will try to help you. I'll tell you always that this if you buy this extra thing, it will save you time, right? Because that has become the most important currency of today. Okay, something which is affordable, as a lot of you said, and affordability itself is very relative to a specific socioeconomic category of people, right? Based on the SEC that you belong to, your affordability range will differ. So let's say I've been in the industry 15 years, my affordability for a car is very different than when I was, let's say, a student, or when I was, growing up. Because growing up, let's say my parents, we came from middle class backgrounds, we had a different, outlook, our family income was limited. So your affordability was defined separately there. Over the years, as we grow, as the income grows, affordability also grows. And as your affordability grows, your access to the kind of product also grows, right? So today, let's say you buy a BlackBerry suit, which let's say I would buy a BlackBerry suit when I was, let's say, 5 years ago. Today, let's say I'm going to buy a premium quality suit, right? Because let's say Louis Philippe suit, because I can afford it, right? So your affordability of the customers, of the users, will also keep evolving over the period of time, right? So always you have to keep in mind that where is my product, right? Is my product only catering to a certain category? Is the product catering to, let's say, a particular category, socioeconomic category of people, or do I have a wide variety? For example, if you look at Maruti, right? In a Maruti, you also have an option of buying an Alto or a cheaper, smaller car. You also have an option of buying, let's say, a Ciaz or a high-end model, right? But on this, that's where it has basically made itself affordable to a wider range of people. But let's take this. Let's take an example of a company like BMW, right? BMW probably has only premium because for them, their socioeconomic category that they want to cater to is that higher segment of people who have certain amount of what you call affordability, and all the products fall under that bracket, right? So every company will decide how they want to position themselves, which we call as brand positioning. Again, that's another separate workshop altogether that can be taken entirely on understanding brand positioning, brand building, brand recognition, brand recall. That's a separate workshop altogether. But trying to understand what does the brand stand for. So Maruti as a brand stands for certain things. It stands for affordability. It stands for Indian. It stands for XYZ. BMW as a brand again stands for something else, right? Affordability also is different because the socioeconomic category that they are trying to cater to is also different, right? Profitable in the for the manufacturer in the long run, yes, because obviously initially you make some losses, but eventually over the period of time when you get break even, and then eventually after some point of time when you start making profits, right? There should be a market for it, right? Somebody said this very rightly. I don't know who said it, but for a product to exist, if there is no market for it, you are basically just wasting an opportunity, right? You're just putting your energies into something where you're not really doing it. Taking the example of cars, right? There's this very interesting data that showed that in India, the rise of mini SUVs, right? Some of you might have seen like the Ford EcoSport or the Maruti Brezza, or Hyundai has this what's the model, Creta. So it's a mini SUV, not a full-fledged SUV, but a mini SUV. Interestingly, in India, how cars existed was you had a small car, then you had a small car, you had a sedan, and then you had an SUV. There were just three major segments in India, right? A small car, sedan, which was your like the Maruti Xtreme type of car, and you had a SUV, which is a Tata Safari bracket. Now, interestingly, when people did the market survey, they said that people don't want a properly, like they don't want an Alto or a Santro, but they don't even want a sedan. So they became this another category called premium hatchback, right? Which was basically your Baleno or Polo, that kind of a segment, right? Which was again created because now suddenly said the people, there is there is a substantial group of people who want not the very basic car and not the sedan, and somewhere in between. So a new category was created, a new market was identified, and people started to buy. Now almost every car manufacturer has a car that caters to that particular market segment. Similarly, when you look at between sedan and an SUV, not everybody was willing to pay, let's say, 13 to 14 lakhs in a full-fledged SUV, and not everybody is wanting to, stick around with the sedan. So they came this new category called mini SUV, right? So Creta, Ford EcoSport, Tata Vitara Brezza from Microsoft, I keep saying Microsoft instead of Maruti, right? So that was a new category was created, and today that is the fastest growing segment in India in cars, right? The mini SUV category, to the extent it was responsible for Renault's upheaval in India, like revival in India when they launched Duster. It was almost about to die out in India because earlier they had a partnership with Mahindra. It was about to die out, and then eventually they kind of resurged when they launched Duster. Then you have Citroen, a new company which is entering into India, which again is launching for the. In fact, Ford also as a company, Ford failed badly in the sedan segment. It failed in the hatchback segment. The only segment that actually made it go up was the mini SUV segment, right? So as you build products, as you join companies, when you go out there, you will start to understand that the market will keep responding, right? Market will keep evolving. One major factors in what drives market is the people's earning capacities, right? If you look at the per capita income of people in India, people earlier when you look at the 1990s, many of you may not even be born in the 1990s, but when liberalization happened, like early 1990s, and like through 1991 to the 2000, the build up, when people started to buy more stuff because people suddenly had money at their hands, right? So when you have money, when you have disposable income, you would want to go and buy stuff, right? So basic economics, how it works. So until unless there's a market, and how is market created? Market is created when people have more disposable income, right? And it applies to everything. It applies not just to physical product, but it also applies to your digital tools, right? Today, let's say I use Gmail as a premium plan because I can afford it. I have the money to spend for a Gmail like 100 GB data box, right? Whereas earlier I was using the free version and I could, I was just happy with doing that, right? Sustainable, eco-friendly, of course, that is something, the last point, which will keep evolving over a period of time. A lot of companies still don't understand it, the importance of it. But I think slowly moving forward, that is going to become more critical in the days to come as well. All right. So we'll move forward a little bit. So just to summarize really quickly, right? A product is, any item, physical or abstract. It could be software, service, physical product. The key criteria is that there has to be enough users to use it, right? Imagine you launch a product where there are not enough users to use it. So it's pointless, right? Because why do you want to spend time in investing in, researching about a product and building a product? When I say product, both the software product, like a software, digital product, as well as the physical product. If there are not enough users for it, it just dies out, right? So for example, many times, some companies come up with this, here's this new physical hardware device, right? Which is launched with lots of fanfare. A lot of people, go and talk about it, XYZ, and then eventually it dies out because there's just not enough users using it, right? Second most important point for a product is that it should be built over. People should be able to use it over a long period of time, right? Unsuccessful products, people use it. The what you call the excitement dies out very soon, and if people stop using it, that's like the death of the product because people have stopped using it, right? I'm sure many of you have come across many products, maybe in the form of an app or in the form of a website or in the form of a physical product, which you started using it very initially with a lot of excitement, a lot of fanfare, but it just died out after a certain period of time because that excitement was not there, right? A good product will always ensure that there is a substantial number of users for it, and it always lasts for a long enough period of time, right? And the reason being that that is the only two factors on which you can justify its creation and further improvement. So imagine if if users in India stopped using cars, right? The company will have no justification as to why they should keep investing their R&D and their money into actually creating it or improving it. You see? So every time, and if there are sufficient users, if the users base is continuously growing, and they are going to be there for a long run. Those are the ways in which you want to invest so that you can justify its initial creation at the same time the improvements on it as well. All right. And when you talk about the market, right? Market is basically any place or it could be a virtual marketplace or a physical marketplace wherever there's an exchange of goods and services between two parties, right? So whenever there's an exchange between two parties, so you as a provider and somebody as a receiver, whenever there's an exchange, that's the market. Right? So sometimes today, of course, a lot of our transactions happened in the online world. So our online world is our market, but in traditional sense, if you look at historically, back in the times of Roman civilization, our ancient civilizations, marketplace was that place in a town, in a city, in a location where people would gather and they would come and do commerce, right? They would exchange pleasantries, they would exchange, goods. There was barter system. I'll give you something, you give me something in return, or I'll take a service, I'm going to give you some gold coins in return. So that was always the historical significance of a market. And the same thing is applicable even today. In our world today, when technology, internet, mobile has kind of taken over our lives, we all talk about the virtual marketplace, right? Yeah. So in the virtual marketplace, basically our entire thing is happening virtually. I can do my transactions, offer my service to somebody sitting in Russia without even having to go to Russia, right? As long as the person is happy with the service, they are going to pay for me for it, right? At the end of the day, like market is defined by the people who come to that marketplace, right? If people don't come to the market, if the people, as in the users who don't come to it, that is basically the existence of a market doesn't exist there, right? So it's important for us to understand. We've understood product, we've understood market, right? Now, the market also evolves as the product ecosystem evolves. Can anybody explain that? A market evolves as the product ecosystem evolves. Anybody would like to explain that? What I mean by that? Let's see. I've been talking for a long time.
More people.
Pardon?
More people. Then more people will need that product if the product explodes.
Well, if you have a better product, more people are just gonna, feel comfortable buying it. They know that they're paying for the right thing.
Right. Okay. So the markets evolve as the product ecosystem evolves, right? So again, taking back to the example of the cars in India today, earlier cars in India was limited to, let's say, back in the 1980s, early 1980s when Maruti launched, the Maruti 800. It was that landmark moment in the automobile industry in India. It was the first time when you're going from, Hindustan ambassador cars to something a little bit more sleek. Maruti with Suzuki launched cars. And if you look at the car ecosystem today, the automobile market ecosystem today, that is such an evolved ecosystem, right? And the market has evolved because today, based on the people have more choices, the product catalog is also very wide enough. People have more number of choices. Yes, Shubham.
Yes, sir. So we can take the example of phones. Like initially we were using telephones in mid 80s, 90s. Then market evolved, and also the consumer also evolved. And now we are using keypad phones. Furthermore, they are using smartphones and like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a great example. Phones, of course, are another great example. I remember this just last weekend. My daughter, she's 7 years old, and we were in a hotel, and she saw this dial phone, right? Of course, she's all grown up using a normal phone, like the smartphone, but she saw a phone in the hotel, and I told her, why don't you go and try to use this phone and the reception. And she actually didn't know what the receiver was, what the phone was. She picked up the whole phone and she wanted to do something with it, right? And then I had to explain her that no, it's not that, right? Because today, of course, for her world, phone means a smartphone, whereas we have, of course, seen the entire thing, right? Go from a receivers, the pickup and call dialing systems to what it is today. Phone ecosystem, yes. One of the major outcomes, one of the major consequences that happen on the evolution of product ecosystem is a change in human behavior, right? Anybody would like to answer that, or like kind of take a comment on that statement? That a change in the product ecosystem. We said that markets change on the basis of product ecosystem evolution, and then when product ecosystems evolve, user behavior, the human behavior also changes. Can anybody illustrate that with some
Well,
examples?
to put it simply, I would say that humans, we're never satisfied with what we have. We want to make it better, which in
Right.
turn makes the product better, and so does your product evolve and your whole ecostructure around it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So one is of course the quest for making it better. But can you give me some examples? Can anybody give me some examples of any product ecosystem that has evolved, which has caused a substantial behavioral change in our lives?
Phones is a good example, I think.
Phones for sure.
Like earlier, I would say back in,
You
let's say,
and internet,
1990s, you would actually physically socialize. But
delivery
right
Right.
now, we can say everything is online. So yes,
Online.
there's quite a behavioral change.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Socializing, the whole notion, the concept of socializing itself, right? It has brought about this fundamental behavioral change. For us, socializing often on a chat group or a clubhouse. Clubhouse is the trend these days. That has become our definition of socializing today. Whereas earlier, of course, it meant to actually go and meet people in public, right? Meet people in physical face to face. Yeah, Ujjwal, you were saying something?
Food delivery system, sir.
Food delivery system. Yeah, how has that impacted your behavioral change? So how has the products in the food delivery ecosystem, and I'm guessing you're talking about Zomato, Swiggy, and the likes. How has that
Yes,
evolved, changed your behaviors?
sir. Like we earlier like to go to the restaurants, but
Mhm.
now we prefer ordering from the home
Mm-hmm.
in urban areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a behavioral change, I
Okay.
think.
Shubham?
Yes, sir. So recently you talked about the mobile data, the evolution in mobile data. So in back days, like for 10, 15 years ago, we used to visit in cafes just to surf a little amount of internet. But nowadays we are to entire day we are just we are just connected with our phones in Facebook and other social media platforms. That could be a type of behavioral change, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like the whole cyber cafes have almost get run out of business, right? Like because the behavior of the person has changed. Like who goes to a, even if like who goes to a cyber cafe? I mean, like there are some people who still go, but then if you look at majority, that thing is also shut down. STD phone booths, right? That has also kind of gone away because now everything is accessible on our mobile phones. What else? Any other examples? Food tech, good example. The other thing that happens with food tech is now suddenly.
So can I elaborate on the food example,
Transportation.
the food delivery system?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
You see, back in the day, you would like go all the way to a restaurant, and if you wanna, go to movies, after that you would go to a restaurant. But now you got Netflix and you got apps like Swiggy or Zomato. You can just order, sit back at home, watch your movies on Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Right.
And that just puts theaters out of business, and well, not restaurants necessarily, but yes, it does impact how many
Yeah.
people come into the restaurant.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and in fact, during the lockdown, if you look at the past year or so, I think we have, I think everybody has gone through a substantial amount of behavioral change, right? Whether it's in your workplace, whether it's in your home, whether the way you look at family relationships, whether you look at travel, there's a substantial amount of change that has happened, right? And I think that's what, of course, a situation like this, a circumstance like this also provides. Harshita, you were saying something?
Yes, sir. I was saying about the transportation.
Okay. What example in transportation you can think of?
So like nowadays we have vehicles to move on, and earlier we used to travel. Walk. We used to walk to travel to places, and now we have some vehicles to travel. So I think this is a huge change.
Okay, so the fact that we are walking less, we are relying on vehicles more. In fact, actual data shows that people in like a lot of small towns, a lot of metros, even to go for a small distance, they book a cab and they want to go. And booking cab also reminds me, like these mobility services like Uber, Ola, that has also brought a substantial change, right? I remember when almost like 7-8 years ago, before when Meru cabs was a very popular cab service, right? Of course, it's not as popular today because Ola, Uber really changed that market. But we had to actually go and I was very happy when Meru, you could actually pre-book a cab at Meru, and it would then, like I would book cab because I used to usually take early morning flights. I would have to get Meru cabs at around 3 a.m. in the morning or 2:30 in the morning, and I used to get so excited. So I used to feel so elated when I used to get a successful booking that yes, cab has been booked for you and you will get the details early morning. In fact, for a long period of time, I continued to do that even when Ola and Uber came into the picture. It's only recently now that with the availability of cabs almost 24/7, you feel comfortable that yes, you can get a cab at any point of time, as long as you are in a zone which has good services, right? So if you start looking around your lives, the product ecosystem in our lives evolves. Our behaviors have also evolved, right? And the way you consume information, the way you do utilities, the way you do your entertainment, the way you do your education, the way you do healthcare services, right? A lot of people complain, a lot of doctors complain. So I come from a doctor family. A lot of doctors complain that a lot of the times the patients come to them who already have so much information about a disease, and they ask so many questions because they have actually read up about it on Google or read up about it on so many websites before they even come to the doctor, right? So sometimes the doctor's work becomes more difficult because the patient is just asking too many questions, patient is not trusting the doctor, and all these issues will start coming up, right? So things which were not existed before, but as the product ecosystem has evolved, as access to information has evolved, as our the way we consume information, the way the user product has evolved, our behaviors also keep evolving. And I personally love to study the evolution of human behavior. As a part-time research, also I keep doing that from time to time. Digital payments, right? If you look at digital payments coming from Paytm, digital payments has caused substantial amount of behavioral change in people, right? In fact, when I travel to, let's say, Bangalore or like Pune, Bangalore, any of these metro cities, I hardly use cash, like zero. I like literally like zero cash. Like every single tea shop, every single vegetable vendor, every single like a small place accepts digital payments. Either it's Paytm or your Google Pay or any of those likes, and it has caused substantial behavior change in me. In fact, sometimes, of course, I have ended up being in a bad situation because of whatever XYZ reasons. But generally, that has caused a behavior change. And digital payments in India, of course, is another region and the area where a substantial amount of behavior changes actually also happen. Okay, great. So as I said, so markets important, product important, market important. Of course, when we talk about the whole fitment part of it, right? So there is, of course, two parts to it, right? So one is a product and this is a market. And of course, when we try to basically get that fit, that is what really what drives our thing, right? So inside when you look at the market, right, there is, of course, a certain target customer that you want to really target. And of course, they might have a lot of these underserved needs, right? And we'll talk about that in a while. But basically, I want to introduce, and this is one thing which I use a lot. And I really love when to talk about this because I do feel that many times, we are not able to understand whether our product is coming from a needs basis or whether it's coming from a wants basis, right? So I often teach this thing called needs versus wants framework, and it's a kind of simple way for me to understand that whatever I'm designing or whatever I'm proposing as a part of the product, whether is it a need that I'm fulfilling or is it a want that I'm fulfilling, right? And I would love to hear from you as to how do you differentiate a needs and a want, and what are some of the parameters that go into differentiating needs and wants. All right, so let's go ahead. What are needs basically?
So need is basically it means that we need something. I mean, it's a necessity basically.
It is a necessity.
Sir.
So how about I give you an example?
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm going to switch up my video. Apparently, there was just a power cut and I lost net connection, but should be fine now. Yeah. So I get my screen turned off, right? I'm going to share my screen again. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. So someone was saying that needs are more of a necessity. Okay. So is wants not a necessity? If needs are necessity, then what are wants?
So can I give an example?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
So you see, you get clothes in your local market for about 500 rupees, but then you can, the other choice you have is that you can go all the way to Gucci and pay about 5,000 for a t-shirt, simple white t-shirt. So in this
Right.
case, your clothes that you buy from the local market, that's your needs. But the shirt you buy from a designer store, that's your wants. Something you desire. Needs is something which you
Okay.
really need, like, it's pretty basic, but wants is something you
Right.
desire.
Right. So when I say needs are more necessity, wants are more desire driven. Can I kind of say that? Just to
Yes,
summarize what you
absolutely.
said. Right. Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great point, right? No, and probably the most simplest way of addressing this is needs is necessity driven and wants is desire driven. Okay. What else?
Sir, sir, can I?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Sir, basically, in the point of manufacturer, needs means we give front advantage to the public, and in wants we focus on the money and our product, not in the ecosystem and social. Basically, needs require that.
Okay, so you said the needs product you focus on the product, and on the wants you focus on the money.
Yes, yes, more on money and less on product.
Okay, that's a very interesting way of putting it. When you're on the needs, you focus on people, and so let's just call it focus on business, right? Which is interesting. I not thought of that, but because for me, like if you're a business, if you're a manufacturer, for you even focusing on business is not a want; it's actually a need, because that's your survival for them. But we'll put it there. We'll deliberate over it later on. Anything else that comes to your mind? Come on, there are a lot of things. Like simple. It's a very simple framework, right? Trust me.
The need
According to me,
needs mean
something. So may I?
Go ahead. So I heard two people speak. One can go first. Yeah, one person can go.
Sir, according
Yeah,
to
go
me,
ahead.
which is pre-requirement of innovation.
A need is a pre-requirement of an innovation. Interesting.
Yes.
Why do you say that?
So because when we need something, then only a product can be innovate. We can produce some innovation in that product, and that could be helpful for the society and the people.
Okay. So is what's not a pre-requirement for an innovation then? What do you think?
So
is what for innovation can want not be pre-requirement?
No, so it could also be a one. It is quite
Okay.
difficult. It is quite difficult to separate these two terms.
Okay. Yeah. So innovation can be either way. So a pre-requirement can be innovation can be an innovation can be rooted in a need, or it can be rooted in a wants. Either ways. Like like the example that was shared earlier on the dress for a Gucci, for sure, like for them that is also innovation, right? Like they want to make sure that they make something which is as aspirational and as costly, and for somebody that might be a for some it might be a want, for some it might be a need, right? What else? I'm going to put this outside just because it's a common thing across.
the need
Sir,
need
wants are
focused on
something.
problem solving products, and wants focused on comfort products.
The needs focus on problem
Solving products.
Give me an example. And this
Sir,
is
like if a simple phone can be a need, but an iPhone can be a comfort or a want, and a simple car can be a need, but a Lamborghini can be only be a want.
Okay, great point. What else?
Sir, needs are
Want
necessity and the
needs focus
wants are the needs which are created by advertisement by the companies by showing us a problem which we didn't realize earlier existed. I think.
Okay, that's a big one. You're bringing in marketing, you're bringing in advertising, you're bringing in latent needs. So multiple things you're bringing in the same sentence. So I would want you to repeat that sentence once again, so slowly.
So, needs are necessity and wants are the needs which are created by advertisement by the companies by showing us a particular problem which we didn't realize earlier existed.
The wants basically you're saying are needs created are nothing but needs created by marketing and is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Can we say that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting point. Okay. What else? Is there time boundedness to it? Like, can a need be something of a need today, or can something be a want today and tomorrow it becomes a need for me?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Any examples we can think of? So
So
my question
like we said
is,
earlier, phones, like earlier, no one would use them
yeah,
because they were
something is a
just way
want
too
today.
expensive.
Sorry, come again.
Like phones, like we stated earlier,
Right.
no, they were too overpriced to be used earlier, and they were wants like that. That was something that people desired. They cannot really afford it, but
Yes.
now it's more of a need to keep in touch
Right.
with your loved ones, dear ones,
Yeah.
to keep in touch with your
Yeah.
friends, etc.
Right. Yeah. So if you ask me, like someone said an example on iPhone, of course, initially it was probably for me, of course, for a long period of time I worked with a very basic phone with a very basic camera, right? And then I always desired to get a good phone. I wanted to get a good phone, but I was able to manage because it was fulfilling my needs of doing my calling to my parents and sending SMS, because those are the only two things I was doing on a phone, was to call and SMS. There was no WhatsApp, there was no internet to this extent that we are today. With the whole BlackBerry era where we were using Nokia, what do you call, and the whole touchpad, not the touchpad, the keypad screens and all those things. Many of you may not have even used BlackBerry phones, but then because that time email, phone, and SMS were the only three use cases that a smartphone provided, right? At certain point of time, then I started to travel a lot more. And then I started my want of wanting to get a good phone with a good camera, because I was able to manage, but a Nokia phone still didn't take a good photograph. So my want of actually the desire of getting a new phone with good camera became a necessity or became a need for me, because then I had to use that. I wanted to use that as a way for me to capture my travel experiences and capture, because I was writing a lot about it. I was sharing photos about it, right? So many times what happens is for a user, when I say like for a user, the wants could become a need as well, right? Uh, and many times there's one major factor that plays into it. Anybody can guess what that is? So I just put that statement here. Often a want becomes a need. I think all of us are victims of that. Anybody can guess what it is?
Your question?
Society.
Pardon?
Society.
Society, yes. What else? What specifically inside society? Society is a very big world, right? The society is a big world. But something more specifically inside society. We all are victims of it at some point of time.
Sorry,
I'm pretty
could you
sure.
repeat your sentence one more time? I didn't quite catch you.
Yeah. Sure. So my question is that often a want becomes a need, right? And there is one major factor that drives it. What is that major factor that drives it? The sentence here I've written here is often a want becomes a need, right? There is one factor that drives it often. One person said the society, but I want to be a little bit more specific inside society. What exactly, or what phenomenon drives it?
Peer pressure.
Pardon?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure, exactly, right? And that to me is often the case wherever you have, like, say, like, hey, you're not using this product, you're missing out on so much, right? Or hey, you should check this thing out because this is so cool, right? You may not even have a need for it. In your mind, that is just a desire. I have no need for it, absolutely. But suddenly, with this one small peer pressure, with this small social phenomenon, that has become a need for you. Yeah, of course I want to have an iPhone. Of course I want to have a Gucci bag, because why not? All my peers have it. And all of these are basically just human psychology. When you start to understand and talk about a little bit more about human psychology, these things come more into the picture, because the human mind basically, is a victim to peer pressure, right? And that basically controls entirely your want and needs, this whole boundary shifting between want and need, right? Our desires, the other thing which I also wanted to talk about is desires, the wants are infinite in nature, needs are more finite in nature. Do you all agree? So needs are more finite because there's a limit to a need, right? I can do well with my one pair of jeans, or like I can do well with two pair of jeans. But my want is that I should have 10 pair of jeans or 14 pair of jeans, because I want to have like one. I cannot wear more than one. I cannot wear a jeans more than twice in a month. Right? That's my want. But my need is that I can actually do with two pair of jeans in a month. Right? So this is more infinite, right? And this is something that is many times when you look at marketing, right? When someone talked about marketing and advertising, that basically drives this point a lot, right? That hey, even if you have a car, you should buy a new car, right? Even if you have a good phone, you should buy a new phone, right? Or the phone that you have is obsolete now because we have better technology, right? And the whole story around it is kind of woven so that you feel that hey, in this market now, my product which I'm using is kind of obsolete and I want to get a new one, right? So often this whole needs versus want thing, you as a person who's thinking of building a product, you should try to always question, right? Where is it that my product basically fits in, right? Does it fit in the needs category of people, or does it fit in the wants category of people, right? If it's fit in the wants category of people, you would have to continuously the sales would be tougher, because you have to really want people to go and buy. But if you are focusing on a need, an air condition, for example, right? Summers in India have become like really unbearable these days. So now suddenly air conditioners have become a need for people. Whereas earlier in my parents' generation, none of us used air conditioners in our air conditioning in our homes, right? It was all without air conditioning. Probably, of course, there's climate change at play, XYZ. So it was earlier air conditioning or washing machines or interestingly, dishwashers. Dishwashers is one of the most fastest growing product category in consumer electronics in India. And it's a mind-blowing fact to me, because I always thought that dishwashers is only a thing of the West. Only people in the US use it, only people in European countries use it. And I was surprised to see it in many apartments in Mumbai, actually giving you a free dishwasher as a part of your home buying experience. And suddenly now there's a huge market need, which earlier was a want for people. Now that has become a need for people, because people are trying to see of course, big pressure. They might be the fact that of course, who wants to do this menial task of washing dishes? Maybe just use a dishwasher. So when you're a little bit open and start to observe market dynamics, when you start to observe how markets are evolving, how product ecosystems are evolving, whether it's consumer goods, whether it's manufacturing FMCG categories, whether it's your consumer electronics, whether it's the products that you're using on a phone app as well, right? Things are evolving as we speak. Today, of course. If you look at digital products, it has evolved considerably. Many times we never thought we would actually be needing to be on so many social media channels. But today, of course, a lot of people say, of course, I have to be on social media channels because that's my need for my existence, right? Otherwise, if I'm not on social media channel, maybe I'm not, I don't even feel that I'm existing, right? So this whole conundrum, right, that between needs and wants, I often think that when you're trying to build a product, this becomes the very first way for you to understand that where does it's perfectly fine. Here's the interesting thing. It's perfectly fine to build a product in the wants category or in the needs category, right? If there's no hard and fast that you have, of course, needs are more, problem solving. You actually identify a need and you want to do it. but it's okay to actually have a problem which you just cater to the desire of people, right? Here's this aspirational product. You should come to. For example, all of you might have heard of this company called Cred, right? Have you heard of this company called Cred?
Yes, sir.
Cred, C-R-E-D,
Yes,
Cred.
sir.
No, sir, not really.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right. So Cred is this, this aspirational community of Cred is a credit card online payment. It started with credit. You could make your credit card payments online, and it is very clear in its agenda that we are building a product in the wants category, because people were able to pay credit card bills even before earlier. It's not that people were not able to pay credit card bills earlier. People were able to do it well. They were able to do it through the bank websites. But today, Cred has positioned itself as an aspirational platform because its target is very clear. They are targeting the top 100 million users in India who belong to that top 100 million elite in India. And they're saying that we are going to build a product only for that category of people. Once we have those people, because those are the people who spend credit card, use credit card the most, and we want to build a product only for that. We don't care about, or we're not worried about, a small town person, or somebody who spends, let's say, 5,000 rupees a month on credit card bills. We're not worried about them. But somebody who is a regular credit card user, they want to, they should be coming on a platform, and they have their entire, engagement around that. They have their entire planning around that. They have an entire product roadmap around that. So they are very clear that for us, we are starting to build a product which people will desire to get into, right? You almost, and many times this becomes driven by your status symbol, right? So it becomes a part of your status symbol that, okay, I am a part of this thing, right? So many people actually bought iPhones because it suddenly elevated their status symbol. It didn't solve a problem. They were still probably using only phone and SMS. The only same two functions that they were using on another phone as well. But the fact that it was an iPhone, it was part of their wants, it was part of the desire, suddenly elevated their status symbol, right? And probably iPhone understands this very well, right? There are a certain substantial number of people who would buy a products purely just to fulfill their desires, right? And they're perfectly fine with that as well. Of course, there's a lot of the productivity and things which people talk about, which of course because I don't use my iPhone, I cannot talk about much, but I use a MacBook Pro, right? And I've been using MacBook machines for the past 13 years, 14 years now. And I can vouch that I feel much more productive when I'm using a Mac compared to when I'm using a Windows PC, right? So what initially was a desire when I was a student, I probably was working on PCs. There was a desire for me to use Mac. Once I started using it, that became a necessity for me that I'm going to use only that, right? So you will often, when you start to map your user's life also, right, in terms of how they evolve on the usage of a product, to the extent that can the product become an extension of them. If a product has become an extension of them where they feel that I cannot do without this product, right? This has become my necessity. That is where you have hit the real sweet spot of the great product market fit. There you know that yes, I have really hit it like on the the bullseye, because now this user is not going anywhere and they're going to be using my product. All right. So always keep this thing in mind. Again, a very easy exercise to do. Often I say, just spend some time on it because it really is helpful as well. So we talk about the market, so there's the customers, there's, the needs of the customers, and then there's a product, right? Which we talk about, what is the value that the product is going to provide, what are certain features, and of course, what is the experience of that product itself. Right? So if you remember this diagram here, so what are the features, what are the value that I'm going to provide to this particular market, and what is the user experience that the product is going to happen, that is going to be provided, right? So now, again, taking the same example of, let's say, Cred, they have identified the market saying that, the product is basically a product that helps you to pay credit card bills. That's the only thing that you can do on a utility perspective. The market that they identified is a market which is serving the top 100 million users who pay using credit cards, right? The value proposition that they're providing to them is that you feel a part of an elite community of people who use credit, right? Here are these certain features that they do, and they do it with they claim that they have a very good user experience. It's very good to look at. Of course, there's a criticism of the UX of Cred as well. But then, having said that, they kind of build around that, right? So for the users, what are the features that we want to provide to them, and what is the eventual experience that we want to provide, right? Now, here's the interesting thing, right? If your value proposition is good, the features are great. If the user experience is poor, people will stop using your product. Do you agree?
Sir, can you repeat that?
So if your value proposal, so if you have done your customer segmentation well, if you have identified the needs, if you have basically got a good value proposition of the product, and if you have defined your features also well, saying that these are the features that my product is going to have, but my user experience is poor, the chances are that people will stop using the product, right? Or they will basically go to a competitor who basically provides everything that you're providing, but with a good user experience. And many times when a market leader loses market share, right? Classic example, Nokia losing out to iPhones, right? Or what's another example? Sony Walkman losing out to iPods, right? Target customer, same in the case of Sony. Sony had digital MP3 players for a way long period of time, right? They were the market leaders in digital MP3 players. You could actually take a small, small looking device, rectangular looking device, like almost like a 2-finger width of your device, fill it up with songs and listen to music on the go, right? It served the need of a user. The need for a Sony digital music MP3 player was that people wanted to get music on the go. So when people are on the movement, traveling to places, they didn't want to feel fixated to a certain place to listen to music. So you could listen to music wherever you go. It of course started with the Walkman in Sony, and then eventually went on to the digital MP3 player. The value prop it was providing was you could get music which was on the go, a music which you could listen anytime. The fact that features was that you could have features that you could load it up with X number of songs. It had a good battery life, etc., etc. But the user experience was still poor because the buttons were not very friendly, etc. In comes iPod and changes this entire thing, right? 2003, 2004, when iPod was launched, where they did everything what the from the Blue Below did. But what they did was they bundled it up with good user experience, right? The fact that you could actually surf through your musical albums. In fact, the best thing that iPod, and I don't know how many of you remember the first generation of iPods, which had that flywheel on it. But the first generation of iPod, the most important thing that it did was that it helped you go through your music library with ease, which was such a cumbersome thing to do on a Sony MP3 player or any MP3 digital MP3 player that was existing at that point of time. Sheer delight in the user experience, market disruption, Sony music player, MP3 player died out, right? And as we all know that, this is what basically we talk about, right? When we talk about the product market fit, like there's this market that you've understood customers' needs, you've understood target customers, and here's your value proposition that you're providing, here's the features, here's a, thing that your customer experience they're providing. Another example I'll give you of airlines in India, right? Airlines in India, if you look at when Deccan started, right? All of you, I don't know how many of you are familiar with, we used to have an airlines in India called Deccan Airways, right? Which was the first low-cost carrier in India. And its value proposition was that we are going to get more and more people to start flying in the country. So the market segment was that we are going to get people now that, because this is a time now 2004, 2005, when people were starting to have more wealth. So the wealth was being created. When wealth is being created, people will want to use that wealth, right? Use the money. Of course, instead of spending, and we also said that you want to save time. So instead of going from one place which takes you 35 hours on a train, why not take 3 hours on a flight, right? I'm willing to pay that extra money. So they identified that well. And of course, that was the need that they said for the users, that people want to save time, they want to go. They had a value proposition that the flight is going to be cheap. You can buy tickets on a very low price. There is just one class. There is no food involved. There's no very low frills airlines. That was the feature sets, and they gave you a certain amount of user experience. It went on for a certain period of time. Then comes Indigo, right? It says we're going to do all of those from 1 to 4. But then we are going to bundle it up with great user experience, great customer experience on 5. So instead of a shabbily lit Deccan plane or a Sahara Airlines plane, we are going to give you a better airline, which is fresh, new aircraft, good service, good food on board, etc., and the whole story of that revolve around good customer experience, right? So many industries, and I gave examples of music industry, I gave example of the airline industry. If you look at any industry out there, right, the disruptors have always, understood this. They have spent considerable amount of time in 1 and 2. They kind of build their value proposition very strongly on this thing, and that can only happen once you have understood what is going to be that product market fit as well, right? Now, good research really helps you to understand, identify the customer needs and wants, right? Quite often, we spend very less time in trying to understand customer needs, right? And this is something which I like to often point out, that yes, you have an idea, you want to bring it to market really quick, but spend some time in trying to identify the customer's needs. There are many ways you can do it. You can do some, primary research. You can go and talk to people. You can observe. Again, research is because I take a separate classes on user research. So that's a different topic altogether. But the fact that, you should do research. And today, with access to people, with access to technology, with access to the information, it is not that difficult to do research, right? So let's say you want to launch a new fintech financial literacy platform, right? Go and do research on the existing platforms that are out there. How do people actually get their financial literacy information right now? How do people get information about investments? How do you get people information about, savings, mutual funds, stock trading, etc.? Do some research, talk to people as a primary research, read up what other people have done, do some secondary research by understanding what people have published reports. There's lots and lots of information available out there, because the more you do that, the better you are informed about the customer needs and the wants, right? And that's something which you should also keep in mind, right? I often say that, quite often, there are 3 states of our emotions, right? One is the apathic state, the other is your sympathetic state, and the third is your empathic state, right? When India's liberation was kind of, picking up, right? When people were basically getting more wealth at their disposal, there was a lot of apathy around, right? Because people were saying, okay, fine, okay, now I have more money, I'm going to dispose it off. I don't care about what the, country is going through, or what my community is going through. You are very concerned about your own self, right? So that is being very apathetic, because you don't care about others. Sympathetic is you really care about them, and you really feel sorry about that person, but then you still don't do anything about it, right? Empathy is basically going the next level, is that you understand, you care, and you want to do something about it, right? So you basically, go and spend time, and I say always that you should try to be as empathetic as possible, because only when you empathize with your potential user group, you will be able to get truly to their needs, right? Quite often, when we are at a 30,000 feet view and we don't want to spend time in trying to understand, trying to do research, we don't get to an empathetic state, right? And as a result, what happens is you would build something and you will launch it, and then you'll be like, oh, you know what? People are not even, appreciating what we do. I spent so much effort into it. I spent so much time into it, but people are not appreciating what I'm doing, right? So it's important for us to not be apathetic, for sure. You will be sympathetic, because if you look around you, there is so much things out there that reads your attention, where you think that you can actually intervene. And if you can do something about it, that is basically going that empathetic route. And I feel that today, more so than ever, we need more solutions which are more empathetic in nature, right? And that's something which we should all aspire for. All right. So needs, basically, which are pain points, burning problems, must-have problems, right? Not deficiencies, as I said. So basically, we all talked about this, right? So whenever you can, if you're able to identify a problem that exists very clearly, if you're able to identify pain points, if you're able to identify the must-haves, that you should have this because this is going to really change your life, right? Or this is really going to make that difference. It is going to make your life easier. It is going to make your life, better, right? So obviously that's something on needs, right? And we have spoken a lot about it. That's the ideal state. But of course, as I said, many times you might want to just build products for the wants as well, right? I personally feel that true disruptive innovation happens when you identify the latent needs of your customers. Like many times, what happens is that latent needs means like a customer will never tell you. So when you do research, right, one of the classic conundrums we face when we do research is that you want to go and ask a user, okay, tell me what are the problems you face. But the user, if they knew what are the problems they face, they will tell you everything. But many times, in fact, most of the times, they don't know what the problems they face. So as a result, you as a researcher, or you as somebody who's wanting to do something innovative solution, you would want to find ways in which you can identify the latent needs of your customers, right? Often, when you work with latent needs, you are predicting, you are guessing, and you are kind of betting against the future, right? Saying that I think the user is going to need this in the future, and I have a very strong hunch towards it. This is going to be successful, right? And of course, we have many examples in our lives. The two most famous ones. Person on the right, I think all of you must be familiar with. Who's the person on the left? Quiz time. Person on the left.
Ford, sir. Ford. Henry Ford.
Henry Ford.
Henry Ford, right? Person on the right, all of you
Steve
familiar with, right?
Jobs.
Person on the right, Jobs, right? So of
Steve-
course, yeah.
Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. So they of course are one of those pioneers, so to say, in identifying users' needs, right? And they say that we know that there's a need, but many times users also don't need, they don't know that that's the need, right? And that's a latent need because they are smart enough that they can actually identify. In fact, all of you must have read this statement, right? That Ford says that if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? And he's like, no, they actually need faster. They need a new way of transportation, and that's the need is the car, which they basically eventually ended up creating. Or if you look at what Steve Jobs often used to say that some people say give the customers what they want, right? Because if the customer demands something, just give them, or if this is the need, they give them. But that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to want before they do, right? So that's the key thing, right? So many people like who use the iPod for the first time, till then, no one talked about, of course, some people said that it's a problem to shuffle music, but people were okay with it, right? They were okay to, go through their, what do you call that, tedious process of shuffling through their music, tedious process of, navigating through the music to actually find the right music that they want to listen to. People were okay with it. But then when the iPod came out, it basically disrupted the entire way of how people navigated through their music albums, right? Or how they navigated through the music library on their portable device, right? And then of course, later on, eventually the iPhone killed the iPod, right? And they said that you don't even need a separate, because now even the music also comes onto your iPhone itself, right? And in his 2007 inaugural speech, he tells very clearly that this device is a combination of a phone, a navigator, and a music device. And even that's how, the very, very classic example of how they launched the iPhone. So, I mean, there are many people, and specifically when you become a visionary, when you start to identify needs, and the more time you spend in understanding human behavior, the more time you spend in understanding people and their needs and how their lives are going to evolve once they start using a product. So there are multiple states, right? One state is without your product, and the other is when they have a situation after they have used your product for a certain amount of time. So once they've started using a product after a certain amount of time, there will be new needs that will come up, right? New latent needs that will come up. You as a visionary will have to think that, hey, now that my users are going to use this, tomorrow they will need this particular thing. And I'm going to be smart enough that before they actually start calling out, I'm going to launch in the market. So it almost feels that, hey, they are so smart, they actually thought about my need even before I told them, right? And that's the true innovation that you really speak about, right? I often say that, at the end of the day, whenever you are thinking about products, right, you have to think about what is the value addition that your product provides, right? I feel that in today's age of competition, it is so, a lack of value addition takes my customer away so fast. That is not even funny, right? Like a classic example, and I can share this example because it's actually a reality. Many times, so when demonetization happened, we had, of course, our maximum user base, Paytm user base. A lot of people started using digital payments, but then there was competition who basically started using UPI, and we were a little bit late to the UPI thing, right? So we were still insisting on wallet payments, whereas competition was insisting on UPI payments. For a lot of people, the initial value addition that was there of using wallet for payments, that was the only alternative people were doing it. But the moment people saw an alternative in UPI, which was basically saying that you don't need a wallet, but you can directly transfer money from your bank account to your merchant when you're paying somewhere, that became a way for a lot of customers to shift from wallet to a simple UPI payment. And if you look at, let's say, GPay, PhonePe, Amazon Pay, a lot of these are built entirely on, initially they are built entirely on UPI payments, right? And that was a huge learning lesson for all of us in the financial industry, that products will get disrupted based on circumstances. You have to be fast enough to constantly evaluate what is the value add that your product provides. Because if that thing changes, right, if your value add changes for the customer is gone to some other value add provider, right? And you have to be careful about it. And that's the reason why the tech space in India at least is so, it's exciting at the same time. It's very, I would say, what's the word for it? It's brutal as well, right? That if you don't stand up to that competition, if you don't stand up to the situation, you're just lost out. You just kind of die out in a few years time, right? So ask yourself always this question that, I have a product, I understand my customer needs, I have this feature that I want to provide, but is my value addition consistent? And as I've also said before, that because users need evolve when they start using a product. So tomorrow, if someone starts using a product and they are a novice user of a product versus they are a pro user of a product, they have started using a product. Tomorrow, probably you have to add some extra value add for that user, because otherwise that person is like, yeah, nothing new or interesting is happening for me. So you have to constantly think, what is the value add that you're value add that you're providing for your people as well, right? So how do you really know, right? Like when you have achieved product market fit, right? So when do you really know when you have achieved product market fit? So there's a product in place, there's a distribution in place, and there's the customer needs in place, right? Ideally, when your product value proposition, your distribution channels, and your customer needs are in alignment, that is when you know that this whole mechanism, this whole machinery is actually working well, right? Till your product is ready, right? You will keep iterating over here. You'll keep iterating. You'll create, MVP after the other, minimum viable product after the other. You'll keep creating it again and again. You will go to the market, do some feedback, check it out, and basically say that, okay, this is something that's a feedback that we got. We want to modify it. You'll keep evolving the product, right? Once you have evolved the product to an extent which you feel confident, you will start using your distribution channels, right? So, for example, there could be multiple distribution channels. Right? So, for example, when we use our, we work in a non-profit. I have a non-profit where we work in school education system, and for us, our distribution channel of all our services is the schools who we have partnered with, and we have worked with the schools for the past 5 years or so. So for us, that becomes our distribution channels through which any new product that we are launching, we will pass it along, right? If you don't have a distribution channel defined, it will take some amount of effort for you to go from product to customer, right? In fact, there's this new generation of startups called the D2C startups, right? Direct to customer startup, who basically do away with the distribution channel and go directly from product to customer. So, for example, let's say you're building a e-commerce website. Initially, you would want, let's say you're building a digital, you're building some candles, right, at home, and you want to sell those candles. So your product would be candle, your customers would be the people who would buy it, and you would use, let's say, a distribution channel like an Amazon or a Flipkart to distribute your product, right? But today, Shopify comes and tells you that, hey, you don't need distribution channel of Amazon or Flipkart because they anyway take money from you. So what you can do is you can go directly from product to customers, and I will help you build an interface which you own, and it becomes a part of your product offering. So the Shopify interface or the Shopify, what you call product catalog, is your own. So there's no commission. You just pay us an annual subscription fees for using Shopify platform. The rest, the profit is yours. Direct outreach to customers is yours. Everything is yours. And that has been the major driving force behind the rise of Shopify, right? Where they said, okay, let's do away with the distribution channel. But sometimes when you are, let's say, when you are a product person who does not have, let's say, access to the customers directly, right? Shopify thing works when you know that you can put in the homework to reach the customers directly. But let's say you don't have the access to the customers directly, and you know that a channel like a Flipkart or a Amazon, which has a huge customer base, you can leverage their customer base, and Amazon and Flipkart will tell that, okay, I'm going to charge you a certain amount of money for accessing that customer base, because I have spent that amount of time and money and energy into building that customer base, which you as a product person are going to leverage at some point of time. But in order to access that, you want to give me certain revenue share. So Amazon will, let's say, take a 30% cut of every sale that you make, right? Or let's say Flipkart will take a 20% cut of your sale that you make, right? So product, customers, and distribution channels, when they all are aligned, right? You could use a distribution channel which is Shopify or any of these other e-commerce, WooCommerce or Shopify, any of these products to kind of create your channels, or you could use any of the existing channel any existing like Amazon, Myntra, Flipkart, whichever one of those. So when these things are in sync, when you know that yes, there is a customer demand which is validated by all the feedback that I get from a distribution channel. So customer reviews, your customer appreciations, customer feedback, they become a way for you to keep a check on whether the customer needs are being met or not. The moment you start getting too many 1-star ratings, you should know that there's a major problem in the way your product is addressing that customer need, right? And as a result, you should probably go and start to rethink the value proposition that you're providing to your thing, right? So distribution channel obviously helps you in that ways. There's a product whose value proposition that you have started off with certain value proposition. Over a period of time, you realize that, hey, you know what? I started selling one pair of candles, but tomorrow my customer base has grown so large that I also want to diversify and start sending, let's say, soaps, or I want to start sending house furnishing items, because now I have established my distribution channel. I have a substantial cloud using a distribution channel like Amazon, and I want to start using that to push newer products, right? So new product catalog. So from a candle, I go to a what you call a soaps. From soaps, I can go to household products. From household product, I go to furnishing. Furnishing, I can go to garments. Garments, I can go to eventually bigger thing, right? So today, I can build an entire business of Amazon, or I can build an entire business of Meesho, for example, right? Or on Flipkart, right? Because you have built that customer base, right? So when this thing happens in alignment, the product, distribution channel, and customers are aligned. That is, where you have that right product market fit, right? Now, many times what happens is if there's a disruption in any of those, if someone else comes and says that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to stop. Amazon is very bad. It plays with my privacy, and I'm not going to, use Amazon. Your PMF gets lost, right? It gets disconnected again. So you have to rebuild your distribution channel to reclaim that product market fit, right? So this is very important, because at the end of the day, you can have a product, very good product. You can have access to customers, but if there is no distribution channels to get to them, there will be frustration. Customers will flee away. They'll go to a competitor. You can have product, you can have identified the distribution channels, but you don't have the customers. You're out of business, because you would have spent so much time in product building. You would have had an agreement with Amazon, but you don't have customers. You can have distribution channels and customers, but you don't have good value proposition in your product. You're anyways doomed, right? So that's the reason why when people are building products, people encourage that you should have an understanding of product, the distribution channel, as well as the customers around that, right? So if you look at a time versus your revenues and these different graphs, right? So initially you are talking about a problem solution fit. So this is the phase of exploration. And if you ask this first phase out here, from this first segment out here, that is the phase where you're basically higher the risk, and you would be iterating over your product. You would probably be getting lesser number of users, lesser number of revenue. This is that phase where you really feel that, yes, based on these iterations, I have eventually ended up creating a certain product market fit, and now I feel confident that I can start generating revenues, because with time now my number of users are also growing. This is the number of users on the right side, on the left side. So number of users are growing, and the fact that I can sense that based on my certain investment, because you will need investment to reach out to customers and all those things. There's kind of things there. You would need. You feel that yes, my revenues are growing. after you've hit product market fit, it's the time to really scale your product, right? And that is where, like good investment, like a Series A investment or a Series B investment, they come in handy, because Series A investments really comes at the scale level. This is your ideal level. This is where investments from your friends and family will come into the picture, where they'll be, you can risk something, try out something. This is where your angel network will come in. Your angel network will come in, who will basically say that, okay, I'm going to give you some more fund, but I'm going to take some stake in the company, and I'm going to. Once you've hit that angel, hit that product market fit, that is where it's time to scale, where you start raising funds for, let's say, Series A capital or Series B capital at some point of time, and your revenue basically then skyrockets, right? It becomes your hockey stick growth, right? So obviously, more risky. Many people give up on this startup journey before even they have started to explore product market fit, right? So as we say, doing startup is a long journey. It takes time. You will go through a lot of mood swings, a lot of emotional challenges, because risk, from very high risk. There might be some disruption, some life event that happens, which will force you to kind of start this startup journey and not even get to product market fit type of thing. Even if you get here, sometimes you might feel that, hey, you know what, I'm going to give up. But when you hit this sweet spot, right, of the right risk with the right product market fit and sufficient amount of capital available, you really can see your things grow. And I feel that many times, and the younger you start, the more earlier you start, you have more of that time runway with you, right? So, for example, if I'm nearing 40 today and I want to start, I have lesser runway to do something disruptive versus somebody who might be starting when they are 22 or 24, right? Because they just have more number of years to give into that thing. Right? So their risk-taking appetite is higher, and they have more runway time to give to that particular problem-solving thing as well, right?
So why do you say that? Is that because they have much more energy, or they're much more efficient? In what sense do you say that they have longer runway?
Yeah. So not just energy. I think there are multiple ways of looking at it, right? So one is, of course, you have more runway because one, of course, energy and age, right? With age, you have more responsibility. There are family responsibilities. I like to call it as like you're in a system. When you have lesser number of variables, the system is more stable, right? You keep adding variables, the system gets more complex, and there's more instability in that system, right? So by adding extra new variable, I'm increasing the entropy, right? When I'm increasing the entropy, basically, I have a less risk-taking capacity, right? So very simple example, some of the events that actually occur in your lives. So let's say you get married, that's a new variable that comes into your life. Once you have your first kid, that's the second variable that comes to your life. Second kid, another variable comes to your life. So if I look at my journey, when I started my first startup when I was in 2012, my first consulting studio, that time I was just married and just alone single. We were just bachelor, just me and my wife. We were able to start it. But now that we have 2 kids, our number of variables have grown. So now there's a certain element of, for example, we have to think about safety, we have to think about the kids' future, we have to think about so many other things. Our parents are growing older, so we have to think about their safety, we have to think about so many other things, right? So the number of variables have grown. When the number of variables grow, your risk-taking appetite really reduces. So the risk-taking appetite, which thankfully, if you look at the whole government's trying to push towards entrepreneurial mindset in children, because we want to start building that mindset from the schools itself, schools and college, where you can start taking more, being more entrepreneurial by saying that, okay, I want to take more risk at an early stage. So that really helps you to get, you can try out stuff at a much younger age. You can get people to support you at a younger age. In fact, even a lot of venture capitalists, right, when they're investing money, they try to look for the teams, right? When they see that somebody is young, of course, there is 2 sides to it. One is, of course, the youth energy, which is there to kind of do, and you can actually try out stuff. You'll put in that extra miles, you'll put in that extra, let's say, I remember back in the days, I used to do like 16 hours a day work, but today I cannot do more than 8 to 9 hours because I have family commitments, I have to do. So my time is limited, so there are multiple factors that contribute to it. And eventually, of course, you do make up by say that, okay, I have gained more experience. So hopefully something which I will take, let's say, 1 month to do when I was younger versus I'll probably take 2 weeks to do when I'm older, right? So there is all that equations that come into picture. But I'm just saying that surely from a pure energy perspective, less number of variables, more risk appetite, That's better when you are younger, right? So of course, a lot of people, what they do is they say, okay, I have this appetite, but I'm going to gain some experience and then start, right? But quite often than not, and I say this very confidently because many of my friends have gone through that phase where they have got so comfortable in that I want to get this new experience thing, and obviously, living paycheck to paycheck is a drug that a lot of people have, a lot of us have. You don't want to take that risk, right? So, and the more you age, the lesser your risk capacity goes, and eventually, then you become like you start just regretting over it.
So you're
All
trying
right.
to say that just start young and then how do I put this?
Yeah. See, ideally, you would want to start young. I think, but again, as I said, not everybody wants to do that, right? I mean, if everybody just became an entrepreneur, then companies will not get people to employ, right? And that's also a problem.
Right.
It's not that everybody should become entrepreneurs, but I'm just saying that if you are interested in doing something in entrepreneurship, you want to start up or build a product, it's good to start young because you have you can fail often also, and you have you don't have too much of liabilities, you don't have too much of expenses, unless you want to live a very extravagant life right from the word go, right? And that's a different use case altogether. But assuming that you are okay with living off a like a fairly okay, like not a very extravagant lifestyle, a normal lifestyle. Uh, like for example, I remember when I started my startup, I was living off 10,000 rupees a month in Bangalore, right? And I could live my life. Like we had like okay or 15,000 rupees in a month. We could live a pretty okay life. There were no extra expenses as such. But today, with my family, with my daughters, with my kids out there, probably my monthly expenditure itself has gone higher, right? So all these factors start creeping in, right? And that's the reason why it's kind of advisable to start early. But if you look at a lot of successful founders, a lot of founders out there today, there's of course a lot of serial founders who have done one thing before when they're young, and then they failed at it or sold it off, again started. So there's no right age to starting. It's just that when you are starting young, you have a little bit more time at your hand. That's all.
Also, sir, I missed the full form of PMF. Can you repeat it for me?
Product market fit, PMF.
Yeah, product market fit.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. All right. So one of the other things that I know we are running out of time a little bit, so I want to speed up a little bit. One of the other things which I want to talk a little bit about is this whole stages of a user journey, right? So when you talk about customers, when you talk about the market, right? We often have this approach that okay, market means that I'm going to start earning from that customer, right? But typically when you're building a product, right, we make this mistake. We start to think of monetization first, then retention, then engagement, and then acquisition, right? Whereas in reality, there are these 4 stages in which you acquire, in which what we call as a 4 stages of a user journey. And I feel that let's say you have built a product, you have a good product value, and you have a market also identified, you have the needs identified, you've understood the market well. You have to develop a good strategy towards a user's journey, right? So the stage 1 is basically user acquisition, right? So how am I going to acquire more users to use my product? So if you look at, let's say, any popular product that starts out, for example, if you look at Amazon Pay today, Amazon Pay is a digital payments thing. It is giving you a lot of cashbacks. With every transaction that you do, it is basically giving cashback. So what it has done is, as a part of the user's acquisition strategy, they're telling you that, hey, Paytm doesn't give you cashback, PhonePe doesn't give you cashback, Google Pay doesn't give you cashback, we will give you cashback. So it is telling the customers, it's telling the user that you should come from these platforms to come to Amazon Pay because we are basically acquiring these new customers, right? We are acquiring the new users. So that's a part of the user acquisition strategy. People could have different user acquisition strategies, right? Cashbacks and incentives are one way which has become very popular these days to acquire new users, but then it's a very costly proposition for the business. Like even when I'm giving cashback, a simple cashback of 10 rupees for let's say someone does a transaction on Paytm and I give you 10 rupees cashback, multiply that with 10 crore users who are using Paytm services, that's 10 crore rupees. And if I'm doing that in a month, that's 10 crore rupees burned for me in a month, right? So that's a huge expense for me, right? So initially to acquire users, I'm willing to pay that money. Investor will say, okay, fine, go and burn this money to acquire the users. In fact, Cred recently gave this statistics that to earn 1 rupees out of a customer, it was actually spending 720 rupees, right? And that 720 rupees meant like you actually divide that cost across, the people who are using the product, the people who are building the product, marketing cost, there are multiple costs involved. So user acquisition is a strategy that you should think about from day one of your startup, that how I'm going to acquire users. So I'll give you another example of how we are doing it in our own product that we are building. We have already access to a lot of schools. So we have created distribution channels. Through those schools, all the students who are basically students of that particular school, eventually they get to use the product. So we have defined a clear strategy for that. Then comes, even if let's say you acquire the users, it's no good if you're not able to engage them, right? So there are two metrics that people use generally about in engagement. One is your daily active users, and the other is your monthly active users, right? So DAU, and MAU, which is MAU, right? So DAU and MAU are two like common terms which you will hear often in the product industry, but they are primarily targeting as to look at the user engagement, right? So a daily user, active user. So if an organization says that I am a active daily user. So if my platform has, let's say, a very high number of daily active users, which means that there is a good amount of engagement happening on the platform, right? No platform out there, no product out there will have 100% of daily active users with the number of users that are actually signed up on the platform, right? So for example, let's say a company says that we have 500 million users, right? Out of 500 million users, our daily active users is probably 200 million, right? Which means that averaging out on a daily basis for every month, they say that out of the 500 million that are onboarded on a platform, that we have acquired on a platform, 200 million of them are daily active users. So they use it daily, right? And we have approximately around 400 monthly active users whom we know that they actually engage at least once a month on our platform. So our monthly active users is higher. There will always be a certain number of users who will just be acquired and they do nothing about it. So for example, if you ask me, I don't use my competitors' products, but I will still be part of the numbers. When they talk about the numbers saying that we have acquired this user, they will still tell it in the numbers that this user is acquired by us, but they cannot tell it in their engagement metrics because I'm not engaging on that platform, right? I'm engaging on my own platform, right? The next stage comes, after engagement comes user retention, right? In the age of competition, in the age where so many products are vying for that same space, right? And India being a nation of, we are very fast at copying and we are very fast at replicating a successful product, right? The classic example being, in fact, Jio also said they launched Jio Meet, and in fact, the interfaces also looked exactly the same, right? A lot of people thought, people will move from Zoom to Jio Meet, right? Of course, it didn't happen a lot. I don't know Jio Meet data, but the fact that you have got the users, you have acquired the users, you have engaged them, daily or monthly, but if you're not doing enough to retain them, the chances are that user has already gone to some other platform, right? And only when you have retained users for a substantial amount of time, that you should start thinking about monetization from the users. A lot of people, when they think about, and this is a mistake which even I used to make earlier, I used to straight away think, okay, I have my users, how is he going to pay? Right? I used to straight away start thinking about monetization. Before even thinking that how I'm going to retain that user for a year, how I'm going to engage them on a daily basis, how I'm going to engage them on a monthly basis. Acquiring users is not difficult. These days, all of you must have seen this, that in order to access anything on website, it will ask you for your phone number. Or let's say you want to download a report, it will tell you, enter your phone number, enter your email address, and then only you can download the report. What it has done, basically, it has acquired that one user. By virtue of getting your phone number and your email, it has acquired the user. And when investors sees that, okay, this company has actually acquired, X number of users, they feel confident that yes, tomorrow you can launch certain features and products to engage them and hopefully retain them so that you can monetize them later, right? So many startups, when they start, they focus only on user acquisition strategy. If we have a product in mind, we have this idea in mind, this is the value that we are providing, we are going to go all out in just trying to acquire more users. Once we have acquired, let's say 100 million users, we are going to start engaging them in certain way, and we'll start raising money from investors so that they can, help us in the longer journey of user monetization as well, right? So we should be doing this, right, from top to bottom. But mistake we make is usually we try to start thinking the other way around, right? What happens is when you have and initially a lot of times, you must have seen a lot of products, they have free, like onboarding is always free for many products, right? The reason onboarding is free is because they want to acquire the users. If they have a price to that acquiring users thing, people will not pay for it. And in India, at least, people are very mindful of even paying 1 rupee, right? So imagine if you have to tell somebody, okay, I have built this amazing platform, but in order to access this platform, you will have to pay 100 rupees. They'll be like, you know what, keep your platform to yourself. I'm fine without that platform, right? So always keep this things in mind when you're thinking about the user's journey, because when a user comes to your platform, comes to you, start using a product, there will be a journey that you are taking that person through. When you're taking that person through that journey, you have to constantly think about engagement metrics, you have to think about retention strategies, you have to think about monetization plans, right? And eventually you have specific people for that role. So somebody who is in charge of growth, let's say the head of growth for a company, will really look at user retention, user engagement and user retention, right? Somebody who's in charge of what do you call marketing will look at sales and marketing, will look at user acquisition. Somebody who's in charge of, let's say, sales from a revenue generation perspective will look at user monetization. All right. When you think about users, another mistake that a lot of people often make is we think only short term. Again, going back to the slide here, short term thinking is only user acquisition. Long term thinking is thinking of the user that, hey, this person has come to a platform. What if he was to stay on a platform for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, right? How am I going to engage that person? So I'm going to think both from a short-term perspective, which is primarily targeted towards acquiring the user, engaging them, and then long-term is basically thinking about the retention and then eventually monetization from them. So if you ask me, for example, Gmail, right? Gmail, we all started off using free services. 30 GB itself is not a less amount of data, but today my Gmail box has gone beyond that 30 GB. Eventually now I have I take the paid plans of Gmail, and I'm okay to pay it because it's under my affordability range, and the fact that my data is too important for me to leave Gmail and go elsewhere. So now Google knows that this user is now acquired into my system. He or she is engaging enough. I'm able to retain because he's paying a monthly subscription, and eventually I'm able to monetize that user, right? So you start thinking both from a short-term perspective as well as long-term perspective about your users as well. All right. So what happens? Many times people ask me this question that, what if you do not get the product market fit soon, right? There has to be a time bound adjustment. So can anybody give me some examples of what are the consequences? Why does it happen? And what happens? What if you don't get it in the product market soon? Yes, Varnik. Are you saying something? I see your hand up. Yes, go ahead. You're on mute.
Yes, sir. So if you don't get your PMF soon, well, your business is just going to die out. Like there's always many competitors in the market. They're just going to take your share.
Yeah. What else?
That's what's going to happen for starters. And then basically your business is going to go belly up, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your customers are going to be unsatisfied as you're
True.
not going to be matching their needs.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. Other people?
So if we don't get the PMF soon, then our competitor will definitely acquire our spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And why does it happen? So because of our quality of product, because quality of product we give.
Okay. And what else? Sometimes your competitor outperforms you, right? Sometimes the competitors will give you better, services, lower cost. Cost is of course a major factor in which people play. But so when many times one way to kind of address. Come again? Sorry. Hello. Okay. So, you know what, when it happens, there are multiple factors.
Lower is a factor.
Yeah. Okay, I couldn't get you. Your voice was breaking off. All right. So all of you might have heard of this notion called pivot, right? A lot of times, a lot of startups, they actually pivot when they're not able to get a particular product market fit in a certain criteria, right? They have started off with a certain vision in mind, and they're not able to get a certain product market fit. It's fairly common for a lot of companies to actually pivot and build something different, which is shifting away from your original product, right? And the startup world, specifically the tech world, is filled with many of those examples, right? And it's essential often because you don't want to waste the investor money, you don't want to waste your money, you don't want to waste energy often when you know for sure that the product is not going to work, right? And that pivot moments are classic examples in many companies. In fact, I just put together a list as well. If this is going fine, right? If your users over time are, you are able to, if you're able to, let's say, get users over time and it's a good relationship, users are growing over time, there's no need to pivot, right? But if something like this happens, right, over a certain period of time, you hit a plateau, right? Or worst, if this even, over a period of time, this actually starts going down, right? If this starts happening like this, right? That is, you really, really need to pivot, because only then maybe you might want to think, okay, let me eventually get the graph up. And many times in history, there have been moments where either the companies have plateaued out after their initial hype, and until unless there's a new disruption in the company, it has either died down or people have just stopped using it. And generally, what happens is, from plateauing, a lot of times it becomes, just simply people die out, right? So the key should be that how do I prevent from this? Can I do this, right? If you see a trend of users falling from your thing, there has to be some event over here that happens, which will eventually make you think that, okay, I'm going to get back my users growth story on track, right? And there are many examples, right, in tech history, of companies that have actually pivoted, right? Popular ones: Twitter, Instagram, PayPal, Groupon, YouTube. YouTube started off as a video dating site, right? They basically wanted people to post videos so that they can meet and share a video snippet of themselves. But generally, people started posting videos about everything, and that was, of course, the moment when they kind of pivoted to just a platform where you can just post videos, right? Not just your dating videos, right? Of course, many more examples out there, which basically are, Twitter, for example, was started off as something called Audio, which was and there's a small thing here. It was a place where people could download podcasts from all over the world. Right? Pinterest was something called Tote, which was basically, to make shopping faster, more fun, and localized. Flickr was, today we all know it as a photography community, but at one point in time, it started off as something called Neverending, which was a role-playing game, online role-playing game where people could, just take on different avatars and basically play a role-playing game, right? In fact, YouTube, if you look, launched on Valentine's Day 2005. The unofficial slogan there was "Tune in and hook up," and that was where it was set up to be an online video dating site, right? So pivot is also something which we often hear of in the startup world, in the product world. Mentors, advisors, venture capitalists often also help you in that pivot journey if they feel convinced that this is not going to work. Because many times what happens is, we as founders, right, as startup founders, we get so fixated by our idea and we don't want to let it go. I mean, it's after all your baby, you don't want to let it die, right? And when the investor, because for investors, it's the money at risk, right? So they would want to make sure that the money is not lost. So they would actually advise you to pivot. So if you feel that, and many times they would actually, I mean, the good investors will always have good advice. The bad investors will only worry about the money, losing money, right? So the good investors who come with, like, let's say, good advisory, they're actually able to make you think through those different things. They will be able to tell you when to pivot, And if you're not pivoting, then maybe you should change your product value. Maybe target a different market. Many times changing your target market also kind of causes a difference in the way people view your product, right? So you are doing a product for a certain amount of market, and after a certain point you feel like that is saturated. You might want to just go and change your market and find somebody else, find another new market which you want to cater to, and you realize that hey, it actually grew faster over there, right? I think there was an example of one or two companies who did just that, who was not very successful. For example, if you look at Facebook, right? For Facebook, India is a very important market because in India is the only market in the world where Facebook's actual number of users are growing. In the US it's on the decline. Other major countries in the world it's on decline. But India, the market share is actually growing for Facebook. Number of people on board. So they would have. So by changing their focus to India market, suddenly they continue their growth story, right? So many companies have, and this all comes when you start thinking of product from a long-term perspective. When you start thinking of product in a market and its fit, and when the product keeps evolving over a period of time, how it's going to keep changing, and how do you keep yourself relevant also. That's all the whole thing which are very essential for your entire product market fit journey, right? I think it's, at the end of the day, it's all a very worthy journey because I feel it's something which it's a thrill. It's a very exciting journey. It's a thrill-filled journey, which has its ups and downs, which is very familiar with this whole ups and downs. Yeah, it's worth it. I feel at the end, it's worth to kind of do it because if you're really passionate about doing something, the best way to kind of feel satisfied is to be actually doing it, right? Cool. So I'm going to pause there, right? I'm going to open up for questions if there are further questions, right? And I'm going to leave my this slide here. So this is a very interesting product. I'm going to tell a quick story while you think of your questions. So this is the Paytm Soundbox. All of you, some of you may be familiar, some of you may not be familiar. But there was a very interesting customer need that we identified as a company. The need was that many times, if you noticed in a shop, what people were doing was they were actually, once they did a payment, they would just show the screen to the merchant, and merchant would be so busy with, selling something, they would just say, okay, ठीक है, and they would, the customer would walk away. Many times what people were doing, whatever actually, there was a lot of fraud that started happening. People started having screenshots and they'll just show the previous screenshot and say that it has been paid, and they'll just walk off. So to address that fraud, we came up with this simple IoT device called Paytm Soundbox. And now what it does, since a lot of you are also familiar, you said, it does very simple thing. What it does, it tells you every time a payment has been made, you get a confirmation voice notification saying that 200 rupees received on Paytm in Hindi or in Tamil or in Marathi or in different languages that we have. And it's so simple for a merchant because now merchant, all they need to hear is that oral audio feedback on a payment being made, and not having to either check their own mobile phone or having to rely on a mobile phone into a screen that the customer might be showing them, right? So a great example of how a product identified its market and identified a fit for it and then built an entire ecosystem around it. It's a very simple product. For a merchant, they don't even need to have their QR code now, because the QR code of that merchant also comes on the Paytm Soundbox itself. And being very successful right now, it was one of the most successful products inside the Paytm portfolio as well. All right, so a couple of minutes, few minutes, we'll open up for questions. If there are questions, happy to answer a few of those questions. But I thought I'll just give a quick overview of PMF. As I said, it's a you can spend more and more time in understanding of it, but the few things to remember: how do you define a product, the value proposition that you're providing, how do you understand markets, how do you understand users, how do you understand the needs, how do you understand the wants, and then how do you understand the right fit, which is based on the kind of features you have to provide, kind of experience that you have to provide, so that that the product value proposition with its value proposition, distribution channels, and your customers, they're all aligned and they all help you succeed. All right, I'm going to pause there. Questions? Let's hear a few questions that people may have.
Yes. ATM and credit are these type of companies, means they are dependent on the transactions. So how
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get you. Can you repeat your
both of these companies are, sir, Paytm and Create, this type of companies are only transacting their monies. Then how they are making profit?
Right. So, see, Paytm and companies like, so there are different business models, right? So, our business models, for example, there's a revenue involved in purchasing of that device, right? So, that's one example. Then there's subscription fees that you have to do. For example, you have an annual subscription fees for the device. You have, let's say, for example, you have different offers, right? So, for example, you have when you do, let's say, rental payment or you do some other kind of payments on our platform, there's some fees for that. So you earn money through those fees. There are some like lending is a feature, so you can actually buy, you can get loans through Paytm. Then you earn money from that. There is when you do travel booking, because Paytm travel is another major thing that you do. So you have there's a convenience fee that you charge on the platform convenience fees. So you make money through that. And not just Paytm, you can look at Make My Trip, you can look at any of these providers also. They also have a similar business model. So there will be different. So again, when I told you, so the first key is to get acquire users, think about how you're going to engage them, retain them, and then probably think of the monetization journey. I think once you have a substantial number of users on your platform who work well with the platform, who believe that your platform is good, then they'll be willing to pay that extra rupees as a part of your subscription as well. So subscription becomes one way in which people make money, and there could be multiple models as well, around that which generates money. Other questions? Vivek, are you there still? I know a lot of people have left because it's a Saturday evening. I can understand completely.
Yes, I am here. Yeah.
Any further questions? Anybody? I wanted to have a few minutes. I thought people will have a few more questions. I see it's a very quiet audience. So I was in your college right now and I was doing this class. None of you would have been quiet. All of you would have been speaking because they forcibly make you to speak. I just go and stand beside you.
Yeah, Kshitijji, you are absolutely right. This is Shivesh, Dr. Shivesh here.
Yes, sir.
You are absolutely right. This is the main disadvantage of online session.
Yeah, that's true. Wonderful. Yeah, Mohammed. Taha, you want to say something?
Sir, how to manage studies and our startup journey? Same, because there are semesters and projects and assignments. How to manage this?
Right. Yeah, that's a self-development question, workshop question. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just feel that at least when you're in college, right, never make it a single, make it a solopreneur journey. That's the first tip that I would want to give. I don't have that you when you want to do one task in 4 days, if you have 4 people, then you can do the same task in 1 day, right? So getting a good team around you, that is a great advantage. Finding time, I think, being good at time management really helps balancing it out. You can start small. You don't have to have a very big aspiration. You can start here. I want to do a small startup within my own college. I want to do a small thing within my own community. I want to do something my own, then you can keep increasing your radius, right? Circle radius. I think, there are different ways of looking at. One is, your passion. Of course, that's a given that everybody will talk about passion being important for you, and the fact that you need to have passion for doing it. If you don't have a passion, then obviously don't do it because then you're just wasting your time on the startup journey. But if you have passion, I feel that you will find the time for it, right? I remember when I was in college back in IIT Guwahati, then I was, in charge of photography club, hockey team. I was my, college's, cultural convener. And of course, there was department work. And so I think at the end of the day, it's about managing time. Also, one of the things that I use, again, may not be, I do think that it's a wonderful tool to have. Is to time box your activities and be mindful that, okay, if I'm going to spend, let's say, 1 hour on this, that's the only time that I'm going to spend on it, and then move on to do something else, right? So if you start time boxing, if you're more mindful about your time and how you're utilizing your time, I think it will be very well helpful for you to kind of balance things out.
So you said
all
that
right.
we
Other
should
questions?
first So as you said that we should first spend more time to know the problems in society. So how can we start a startup in our college? Because we have not much idea about the society
Yeah,
in
you
our
go
college.
for out, you go for outings, you go to town within your. When I say society, I don't mean outside the college. Even your campus itself is a society in itself, right? There are people in the campus. Even if you talk to people in the campuses who want a certain kind of service, I'm pretty sure you can identify at least 10 problems worth solving just by talking to people on the campus. That's a part of a society also, right? And when I say society, college society, I don't just mean the students. Students is one thing, the staff is another thing. Teacher there, there's staff, there are, teaching staff, non-teaching staff, administrative staff, there are security staff. Then just around your college, there are canteen boys, there's so many, it's a whole ecosystem in itself, right? So when I say society, I don't mean just you have to go outside college. Even within your college itself, you can find so many people to, right? And once you have, let's say, some idea by talking to a few people, then you can always reach out to say that, hey, I want to talk to 10 more people. I want to talk to 50 more people regarding this, because on the basis of speaking to 5 people in college, this is what I've understood. I want to validate by talking to 50 more people who are outside. Can somebody help me? And somebody will be able to help you, and getting access to those 50 people as well outside.
Sir, you talked about that you failed because you could not like build a proper team. I also
Sure.
face similar issues. So, through your experience, have you found the crack through it, or how can one go about it?
This for it also. You understand startup world, it's very difficult to pinpoint on just one thing, right? Like I think many times your life events, cause a certain decision to be taken. Many times you are, so for example, I had resources, I had a team, but the team left because they got some better opportunities. So maybe I wish I had raised some money. Maybe I had some more savings in the company account, which I could then like offer something higher to that person and then grow. So I think there are multiple factors that contribute to it. Hopefully, in the next startup when I do, I will have that thing. Much I'll be much more mindful about that whole thing as well. Because employee retainment, employee and team management, team engagement, team retention is also a major challenge for a founder, right? How do you retain the team? Because I mean, it's easy, right? If a person is talented and if they're not getting the sufficient either equity or stocks or equity options in a company or not getting a decent amount of money, they can go to some other company which is offering them that, right? So it's very easy because people have options these days, right? So people just move around. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, what's easy to join a pre-established company or to start a startup?
Yeah, always see. It depends entirely upon your. If I just feel that when you bootstrap your own company, right, you learn a lot of things. But of course, there's challenges. If you join a startup which is giving you a salary and which is kind of which is making you do things, you can still get the thrill of a startup life. But maybe you don't have to worry about the finance part. If you join a big company, right, like for example, I started off my career in Infosys. It is a very big company. I learned a lot of things there. I learned processes. I learned how teams are set up. I learned HR policies. I learned about like organization vision. I learned about startup. So I learned a lot of things there as well. It's not that you learn only in startup. You learn in a big company also. I think you have to be assured about what do you want to learn and at what point of time. So today, for example, I joined Paytm a year ago. I was very clear as to what I want to learn by joining a company like Paytm. Tomorrow, I might want to do something else, and I might find for a different opportunity which helps me to do certain things in a certain different manner. Right? So I think as your own journey also evolves, you will know what kind of companies to apply for. Right? Sometimes people say that I'm a data science engineer, I'm a specialist, I want to work only in data science companies. So you won't find that kind of a company. Somebody will say, what, I can do multiple things. I want to do a place where I want to join. I want to do design. I want to do marketing. I want to do sales. I'm going to join a startup which allows me to do everything. So up to your journey also, your career journey also will define where you basically, how you basically apply for what kind of companies you apply for and what kind of decisions you take.
Thank you, sir. We are really grateful. Now I would like to invite Professor Shivesh Sharma to speak few words regarding today's session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sohad. Thank you very much. At the outset, I would like to thank Kshitij for a wonderful session of 3 hours. And students, all of you, you must have noticed the energy, the motivation behind his talks. Right through the 3 hours session, he was full of energy. That's the wonderful part to learn about, right? So that's the and I must congratulate Kshitij for such a wonderful session. It was
Thank you,
really
sir.
informative. It was really informative, knowledgeable, and students definitely might have enjoyed and learnt a lot.
Sure.
Kshitij, I would request you personally and on behalf of the institute as well that as soon as the situation improves, COVID-19 situation improves, we will definitely invite you to the college. And I hope you will
Sure.
definitely come and visit and interact with the students.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Sohad, thank you for coordinating, Vivek as well. And thank you all for attending the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
On
Yeah.
behalf of the entire team of IIC, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks to everyone who has directly or indirectly contributed to the successful conduction of this session. First and foremost, I would like to thank and express my gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Kshitij Anand, for sparing his invaluable time to grace this session and enlightening us with his commendable talk and insights of today's subject. I would also express my heartfelt gratitude to the President of IIC, Professor Geetika ma'am, who has been a constant source of inspiration for all of us. We are grateful to Vice President IIC, Professor A.K. Singh sir, and Convener IIC, Professor Shivesh Sharma sir, for their stewardship, vision, commitment, and unstinted support for making this workshop possible. I would also like to extend my thanks to all the deans and heads of various departments, faculty members, students present here who have made this event a resounding success. Last but not the least, we thank all the IIC members for giving their valuable suggestions and inputs. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. So my contact details are here. ksh.anand@gmail.com. Twitter, I'm at Kshitij. In case you're active on Twitter, which you should be, if you are on interested in product ecosystem in India, I think Twitter is a very good space to be in. LinkedIn also, I keep writing a lot about design, about products on LinkedIn, so you can follow me there as well. And of course, on my website, I keep posting stuff. Thank you once again. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, all of you. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.